Welcome back to the Comics Aficionados live right here on Thinking Critical YouTube. I am under the weather, and it sounds like a lot of people are not feeling very good this weekend. So if you're enjoying some chicken noodle soup and not feeling very well, welcome to the party. I'm also there with you, but we have a great panel to talk about. Specifically, we're going to go into all the problems facing Marvel Comics right now. Recently, I had a conversation with Jim from Weird Science about our perceptions of Marvel Comics today. Purge had a nice expose a couple of weeks ago. Even CBR is trashing Marvel Comics these days. We've got some other news to talk about. And a wonderful panel. Obviously, returning is Purge. How you doing, Purge?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you. And I'm sorry to hear you're feeling poor. I think we can certainly spend about 10 minutes talking about, vaccines and stuff to get you super monetized if you like.
Nah, that's all right. So Purge, before I thought you had the worst opinion in the history of opinions.
Okay.
Concerning your take on Arby's and not being amazing. Like,
yeah,
I think you might even say it's bad.
Yeah,
I've actually found someone with the worse opinion than that.
Oh.
Aaron Sparrow says Gremlins 2 isn't just as good as Gremlins. He says it's better.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's a terrible plan. But Arby's is awful food. We can't let's not skip over let's not bury the lead. That's the worst food in the history of man.
A Big Montana and Curly's, like, that would make me feel better. I'm telling you that right now.
You have a lot of diarrhea, and then maybe you'd feel better after that.
I'm going to have diarrhea one way or the other. I might as well enjoy it. You know what I mean?
Bad coming out.
So how you been, Perch? You got any big interviews or stuff lined up?
Yeah, we got a couple things. I've been doing stuff on the background with some business. Been helping a lot of things behind the scenes. I think longtime viewers probably know some of the things I've been involved in. But no, the internet seems to be getting dumber. Hey, I'll throw this out there if anyone saw it. There's this guy. He is the ultimate troll, way better than me. And he posted a picture on Twitter of the Hogwarts disc all smashed up. And immediately it's culture war. People are all over it. Just half the group's complimenting him, half the group saying you gave them money to her anyway, you dummy. What they didn't do is look at him. The guy's name is Plain Rock. He's got like 2.5 million subs on YouTube. He smashes things. That's his bit. And it is hilarious to watch people go at him.
I love the internet.
It's so great. All right, now we have awkward dead air. All right.
This is my bad. I was trying to do something while you guys were having a great conversation, but welcome back, Perch. We're going to have a great conversation about Marvel. Also joining us is comic book retailer extraordinaire Yul Carter. How you doing, Yul? The man who gives 0 fucks.
That's right. I give 0 of them. I only smash CGC cases these days, and I'm getting love for it.
New gimmick on YouTube?
That's my gimmick, yeah. I take the CGC slabs that I have, and I take the comic books out of them. I only have a few slabs, so I can only do one a week.
Doc, you want to send in some slabs so he's got some more material for content?
Those are his books.
No.
Come on, I can crack open your expensive books. Let's do it.
Yes,
number one.
That's what we'll do. You can crack open my Authority number 1. I'll send you out all the undergraded books that I was disappointed in the return
on. That's always an upsetting situation for sure.
Yes. When you send something out and you're absolutely certain, you're like, oh, this is 9.6, 9.8 bare minimum. And then it comes back at 9.2. And you're like, what the fuck did I miss?
Exactly.
You got the wrong score on that one.
Thanks for having me on.
You didn't pay him off, Doc. You got to slip in 100 in there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the trick.
Who else we got? We got from Comical Opinions and Weird Science, comic book reviewer extraordinaire, the man that's under the skin of Stephanie Phillips, and that is a badge of honor in my book. Gabe Hernandez, how you doing, Gabe?
I'm doing just great. Thank you for having me on, and I will cop to saying that my placement under Stephanie Phillips' body and skin is completely unintentional.
Man, that review you wrote was pretty harsh.
I've seen harsher, and
I've done harsher.
I've seen worse.
I've been way more mean.
If anybody who's read my review of Children of the Atom by Vida Ayala, I can get much worse than that. So
very nice.
And here's the thing: as bad as his review was, as mean as it was, It wasn't anywhere as
not
mean
bad.
as the
It was a good review. It was just mean. It was
my point is, as bad or as mean or as harsh as it may be, it's nowhere near as bad as the comic.
The comic was pretty
Could've been
terrible.
worse.
Yep. And I believe next issue is Stephanie's last on Harley Quinn, to be taken over by Teenie Howard. So whether or not that's an upgrade, we'll find out.
Oh no, it's not.
It's not.
It'll get more dull.
Yes. It's always
Yeah.
better.
It's
You know.
possible. Yeah.
Nonsensical.
So,
Possible.
Gabe, I've been looking at your reviews lately, and it looks like you're more optimistic. Like the scores are going up. You're giving some pretty bad comic books glowing reviews lately.
If I like
Did you
it,
give
I'll
up?
give it a
Is what
positive
I'm
score.
asking.
No, I haven't given up, but if I like it, if I see some potential, I'll give it a positive score. I'll give an example. John Ridley's Black Panther, was it number 13 or 14, whichever came out this week, wasn't half bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't half bad. It didn't upset me. It didn't offend me as some of the several other issues he's written prior to did. So, I give every issue, to the best of my ability, a fair shake. And if a writer goes up, then they're going to get an up score. If they go down, they're going to get a down score. It has nothing to do with the creator. It has to do with the creation. And that's always the focus.
So what you're saying is Marvel's checks started clearing.
Believe me, I am getting no checks from Marvel at this point, which is pretty much everybody else at this point. So
That's what it sounds like. Speaking of giving up, Josh McDonald, the man that is championing Phase 4 of the MCU, is back here, the DC expert.
Oh, this is what happens when you say that Black Panther Wakanda Forever was the best film of Phase 4. And then,
You just
Champion
stop. The
Phase
people
4.
stop listening once you say best film.
Oh yeah,
they don't hear the rest.
That's fair. That's fair. Look, I've got a couple things on my mind. One, these people that think Gabe is mean in his reviews, like I pray to God you never look up my old reviews for Batman or Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, because Gabe's a saint compared to what I wrote in those reviews, and Jim can testify. Yeah, I don't know. Shill. Gabe is not a shill. Look, I need to change my tag from totally gay Josh to that shill Josh, or that gay shill Josh. We're just gonna make me the
MCU
heel.
shill got Josh.
Yeah,
yes.
we're gonna continue my heel turn out of 2022 into 2023. But can I just say I'm super glad we're not talking about gay shit today. There's not a gay headline in the stuff that we're talking about, and I'm so freaking excited.
I can
make
gay
it
it up
gay.
if you'd like.
I mean, I'll gay it up later. It's fine.
There you go.
We'll be passing the helmet eventually.
Nice. Yeah, Poison Ivy dropped this week. There's a lot of gay in there.
It's true.
Well,
and that
yeah.
is one of the headlines that we will talk about. Perhaps,
See, there you
if
go,
we get to
Josh.
it.
We got you covered.
I didn't want that shit.
Last but not least, the man who's been here since day number one. People have asked Wes, why don't you drop Doc? And I go, listen, he's the first person I ever invited on the channel. He said yes. I'm kind of stuck with him now. How you doing, Doc?
Well, the reason why he doesn't drop me is because he's not entirely sure what I might do. But yes, definitely the least, and the last. No, I'm fine today. I'm here. I'm feeling infinitely better than everyone else apparently.
We read
this
Bishop
year,
War College and reviewed it earlier.
which somehow, thankfully I read that yesterday, so I didn't have to read it today, which made my day better, because when I woke up, I was in a better mood than when I went to sleep, because I didn't have to read that fucking thing today.
Hertz, did you read War College?
Yeah, no, I read it. It was. I mean, look. On one hand, it's just stupid. It's multiversal, stupid nonsense. It doesn't matter, which is why you shouldn't get too upset about it. But maybe you should get upset about it because maybe the comic should matter.
Yeah,
I didn't read it. Did it involve affirmative action?
No, I mean,
sort of.
He's in a new.
Shut
dimension
up,
where the X-Men are
no.
black. So there you go.
Yeah.
And then
He
later
gets
he'll
into
be
an
in a
alternate
new
universe.
dimension of the X-Men are bunnies, and then he'll come back home and hang out at the tiki bar, and nobody will care.
I like tiki bars.
Yeah.
Hey, I
Best
had
part
my
of the
tire
series.
two back in my day. So let's get to the big headline. We're going to talk about all the things that are wrong with Marvel Comics. Like I said, I had a video with Jim where we were just having a conversation that you would have in a comic book shop. It's like, what is going on here? Purge, you had some more information behind the scenes, and it's similar to some things that I've actually been hearing myself. It feels like Marvel Comics, like the staff themselves, and obviously not the writers, have finally accepted that they've destroyed their X-Men line, but they actually don't think there's anything they can do to make the sales better. And it feels like everything's kind of crating as far as sales. Are they still worried behind the scenes?
Well, I mean, what I said in that video, what I've said is, first of all, they all, and a lot of these things came about 4 weeks early. I had a lot of people saying, it's not true and everything else. In the last 4 weeks, kind of played it all out. Everybody knew big layoffs were coming. They dropped this week. Now this is more Disney, but it's rolling out to other parts of the group, and Marvel has been hit and will be hit over the next couple months. A number of people have been told, similar to Comixology, that your job's here for the next 3 months, but then there'll be another wave. So that is now out there. We've seen that those layoffs have happened. The solicitations was the one that was harder to explain, but it was a bad sign. So I mean, and I think you will at least appreciate some of this. Solicitations are dull in their precision. They come out pretty regularly, always relatively the same time. And, when publishers start to go in advance of the solicitation and provide information out months early, it's usually a sign they're concerned about weakness in something, that they're not getting the sales or the buzz. And so they're trying to get the comic shops to get a little excited about it. But Marvel started putting out solicitations for June, July, August, and there's some for September that have been delivered for series. The Captain America Cold War stuff's out. A lot of the post-fall, the mutant stuff starting to go out. And it's just that's a sign of concern in the company about the sales of the books. And then on top of that, the whole AXE series did poorly. I mean, which is not a shock to anyone. It just didn't sell well. And the expectation,
the story sucked, so that didn't help.
Well, sure. And I mean, going back to the well with or Avengers X-Men 2, but it wasn't that. And there's a bunch of reasons you could see it wasn't going to work. But still, I think the projections, at least from what I heard, was that they thought they would get 75% of AVX, which is, I think, insane. They got nowhere even remotely close to that. The series not only dropped from 1 to 2, but continued to drop. So, I mean, you had low expectations. Dark Web was coming in low. If you've been to a comic shop, you talk to a retailer, a lot of them will tell you that the events are not holding like they used to. And the events were the tentpole that was keeping a lot of things up. So that's all these things together have, are trouble. Now, it doesn't mean that Marvel's going to collapse tomorrow. It won't. But definitely it's bad. And the last thing, I'd love to get some other people's opinion on this, but the last thing about Marvel is that they typically keep their bad news secret. Unlike DC, which is just like a leaky faucet constantly, every piece of bad news gets out immediately and people like to gossip about it.
Teenage girls.
Yeah. Marvel keeps a tight ship. They've always kept a relatively tight ship with their news and their information and what's going on behind the scenes. And in this case, there's a lot of talk and a lot of just stuff's breaking through the dam. And again, it's not surprising we got layoffs in the corporation, but that's in short what's been going on.
But they're doing a lot of cost savings. We can see like Ryan North is now the writer for Fantastic Four. That makes no sense whatsoever. Jerry Duggan is writing Iron Man and the flagship X-Men title. Like they're not even spending money on creators. And you said they were also pulling a lot of stuff that had been created in the years past just to put them out because there's no cost associated with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of books that have been in the bank for a while. I mean, one of the painful things of last year is people talking about Vita getting all this work, but Vita wasn't getting work. These were books that were in the can a long time ago. They were just getting around to print. That there was no active contract there. And they do have people doubling up. They are, going out to other places. I think Donny Cates having a meltdown certainly was not what they expected. I think that they had some plans for him.
Do you think he was going to be the Avengers writer? Because I think that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think Jed, quite frankly, is I suspect temporary. I think this is a temporary move, and they're still holding out hope. Similar to when Hickman was coming to the X-Men, I think the idea is still that Donny Cates will kind of get things in shape and go. He is seen as a guy who brings money to the company, but yeah, there's cheaper stuff. The Raiders are coming on asking to take lower rates, and somebody mentioned it earlier. One of the things you didn't used to hear about Marvel is having to go harass them to get your check, get your royalties, and people are now not getting their checks and their royalties, and they're having to go hit up the company. And from what I've heard, then the money goes out, but again, all these things together, they're like a lot of bad paper cuts that are leading to a lot of bleeding.
You're obviously the comic book retailer on the panel. I don't think Purge has his shop yet, right, Purge?
Not yet.
Not yet, but will be in the near future.
imminently.
What are you experiencing with Marvel? What are the fans saying? Are they excited, or are they still coming in? Is it the same as it was 2 years ago?
No, I'm seeing I'm seeing a lot of people that traditionally like something. Case in point, this one guy came in and said, I never thought I'd say it, but I'd like to be canceled from the Black Panther poll. You know, I went, whoa, this guy gets all the black comics, right? And then some. I've got a lifelong Spider-Man and Hulk fan, and they're just kind of tired of it. I think Donny Cates not writing 2 comic books for Marvel is a big deal. Especially since he was like, you know, I guess you can say they're a rock star. Somebody that people, you know, there's Al Ewing and guys like that, and it's like, wow, I'm going to get a really good book possibly, but it's not exciting in the way that that Cates is. You know, he just throws shit on the wall and people like that. But no, all the events. I mean, I actually didn't see a decrease in acts as far as sales are concerned. I was like sharp on that one, but I bit the bullet on Dark Web for sure. I mean, I didn't go heavy on all the other titles, but as far as the main one, you know, I just don't think people really cared or were interested. And you're right, Purge. They do all their advertising for things that are coming out, and they don't, you know, say, hey, this is out now. We should be really, you know, focusing on it. Their minds are already, you know, way in the future, and it's a shame. And I think, you know, I think people see that.
I think if you're a retailer, this is, I mean, it's a huge canary in a coal mine, and it may not make sense to a lot of the other people listening, but this shift in how they're promoting their books and what they're putting out is a huge warning sign to people. And every retailer you talk to that's seeing this is alarmed.
In fairness, though, there's also one other solution, one other reason for it. They already laid off the guy that writes the solicits.
That might be.
that may be.
Everything you have.
I mean,
but we heard that like some of the writers sometimes have to do it at these companies. You know, write their own solicits, and
they do a lot.
They're kind of, yeah, and it's not. I mean, it is a different skill level. You know, sometimes, and again, you know, Purge has talked about it many a time about, you know, the lazy writing as far as those little blurbs are concerned, and how it almost feels like it probably is just one person doing it now and not the writers even.
You can always tell,
as much as I hate it on them, you know, all of a sudden.
You can always tell that Kieran Gillen does his own still. But I won't say who, but there's a writer at Marvel right now that I go back and forth. This is kind of a frenemy type relationship. And I was complaining about the solicits. So I used ChatGPT and had AI write the solicits, and I sent it back to the guy. And I think they're being used. So if they come out, I will definitely expose it. So
yeah.
You know, that also says something about the how writers are taught these days to write their comics, because I've been contacted multiple times by more than one creator after they've read the review, because if you read the reviews that we do for Weird Science for Comical Opinions, we always put like a little blurb at the top that's sort of like our version of the solicit based upon our interpretation of how we read the comic, to give you like a quick hit of what the comic's about. And I've had multiple creators reach out to me and said, you know what, you kind of described my comic better than I did. Mm-hmm. So it's like the whole notion of the pitch and the elevator pitch and the synopsis is sort of lost on folks that are doing a lot of the script writing. They're so focused on how the script format and structure works that they forget to kind of encapsulate the story in an idea. And I think maybe part of that has to do with this notion of decompression, which gets way too much activity these days. But at the same time, just encapsulate the story into beginning, middle, and end. What's it about? And sometimes they struggle with that, and it's perplexing in that art is sort of lost in people who are actually writing the scripts.
I feel like I need to interject something here. If the writers still are writing their solicits, they're shit writers. Why do you expect good solicits?
Yeah, that's where I was.
I mean, they suck at writing the story. Do you think they're going to be any better at writing their synopsis?
No,
I had to stop covering the solicits myself because they were just so boring. It was hard to make them interesting.
Well, I mean, heck, Gabe even mentioned, like, you know, just understanding your beginning, middle, and end. They don't. A lot of writers don't, because they can't write a beginning. Like, they can't write a 5-act structure for a book, and it's
Do we remember when Sean Gordon Murphy got raked over the coals for asking editorial to know what a 3-act structure was? Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Because it's a bunch of fucking retards in this industry now that don't know the first fucking thing about basic story structure.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, Purge.
Yeah.
they would fail an English 101 course.
Wow.
In fact, I'm surprised
Not
any of them.
101.
No,
Maybe 101.
no. Hold. I'm sorry.
Nice.
I gave them too much credit. They would fail an 8th grade English class because we learned all this shit back then.
But regardless,
well,
I think solicits are about marketing. Marketing is typically a different skill than writing a story. Some people can do both, no doubt about it, but it is a skill. And go hire an intern out of a college, a junior level marketing intern who's trying to impress people. You'd get better solicits. But honestly, to be fair, the chat GPT solicits I got were pretty nice.
Look, I'm going to oppose you to a degree, because if you're in any field where you're doing creative writing, you've got to learn to sell yourself. So you've got to have some type of marketing sense. And if you can't even discuss how to tell your story, like what it's about, how did you even get your story? Well, you know what? That's not a fair comment, because half these writers don't even choose their stories. But that's part of the problem too.
You're right. You should know both, but they're different skill sets. You
Agreed. It is.
You know, Stephen King kind of famously sucked at that, and he had a good publicist that was good. But you just got to either fix your weakness or hire somebody who can help your weakness.
Well, right. Stephen King also had a good point about adverbs, and I kind of like his point on adverbs, so I'll stick with that. If I had my druthers, every writer and editor at the big two would take a marketing class, at least a basic one, to understand the concepts of communicating. And it's not so much having the story, the idea. It's one of the foundations of marketing, because that's part of my background. I'm not going to out myself. Part of my background is marketing as well. Is the whole notion of marketing foundationally starts with understanding your audience, what your audience is looking for, and then tailoring whatever it is you're trying to communicate to maximize the reception of that audience to your message. And
100%.
Yeah, and so if you have writers that are just, this is a personal story, I'm writing this for me. I hate that statement. I hate that comment when I hear writers at the big two saying, I'm writing this for me, because what that says is you're completely ignoring the fact that you're trying to create a commercially viable product and tuning out the audience that you want to buy this comic. So if you're writing it for you and you don't care who buys it, that's fine. If you're doing an indie project and you don't care, that's fine. But if you're trying to write for the quote unquote the masses, you have to understand what they're looking for. And if you can't tailor your story to them, then you've already screwed up right from the start.
All right, I don't think the solicits are really the big problem with Marvel Comics, although there's certainly an issue, Purge.
Well, I was
one of the things I've noticed.
A business class.
You're talking about the events not being very good. I've been reading a ton of interviews with Marvel writers, and almost every time they're talking about their event story, someone will ask them, well, where did the event come from? In the case of Hellfire Gala, I believe Jerry Duggan, he was going to write an issue in Marauders that dealt with the Hellfire Gala, and then Jordan White said, well, that's an event. In the case of Kieran Gillen and Axe Judgment Day, apparently that was a story arc for his Eternal series that got canceled. And they came out and they said, who has anything that could be an event? And he submitted that as turning it into an event. And that's how it happened. And you can just kind of tell that none of these things matter. They're all like retconning themselves by the end. I'm sure you noticed in Dark Web, nothing happened in that comic book. Just like in Axe Judgment Day, by the end, everything reverted back to normal because they want an event, but they don't want any changes. It's really strange.
Sure, but the thing that's going on here is that Marvel editorial and the senior groups have a belief, and it's not a wrong belief because the sales show it, that the events sell better. So sales across the board, the general monthlies, the 5-issue arcs, everything have dropped. Not hugely, but they've been on a steady decline. When I say not hugely, I'm talking from 2020 to 2023. You're seeing a 5 to 10% reduction in monthly sales for these comic books. So how are you going to boost that up? Well, one more event a year will do it, quite frankly. So put out more events. And that is a message that is key in the company is, people, the customers, and in some cases, Marvel then turns around and blames the customers for this. The customers won't pay attention unless it's an event. Therefore, we have to give them what they want, which is more events. And so you see these stories that are not event caliber going into the shops The customers, there's a law of attrition here. They're buying less and less. And so now it's like, well, it feeds itself. Anyone, by the way, with any business sense could have seen this coming. It's oversaturation of events. There's one a month.
Sometimes there's 3 going on concurrently.
Sure. I mean, you're right.
You got Avengers Assemble, you had Dark Web going, and you had Sins of Sinister kick off before it was over.
There's a new event kicked off a month. And I said that a while ago. I was like, no, that's an exaggeration. It's actually not. If you look at their calendar, there is a new event. And sometimes event is, something smaller, but like this Ghost Rider Wolverine thing in August that they're already advertising. But there is a new
Don't forget
event.
the Captain America one that's coming up.
Don't forget the Carnage Miles Morales one.
Oh wow, there's another. I didn't even realize that.
You got Fall of the Mutants in in the summer, and then in the fall winter you're going to have another X-Men event kicking off, and you have the Hellfire Gala kicking off in there. So I mean, what you call events, this is where the argument's like, well, some of those things aren't events, except you're marketing them as events. And to your point with the story, some of these things are just meant to be in the comic. And they push it over into event because that's the way they believe the money has to be made. It's terrible.
And I mean, the ironic part about this is the reason why they've lost 5% over the last 3 years, and they'll continue to lose 5%, is because they can't look at the fact that they published shit. Like they published actual garbage. They refuse to accept that because that requires a degree of self-reflection that everyone in that company, every single person from the janitor up to the CEO and every single contractor is incapable of, fundamentally incapable of.
It's the challenge you have though, Doug, is it's an easy problem to walk away from. So picture for all the people on the panel, the people listening in the chat. Imagine you're running a comic company. You've got 80 books going out a month. The sales drop on those regular books. Not a lot, but a little. You're just losing kind of 1,000, 2,000 readers out of 40. You were selling 50,000, now you're selling 45. What's the solution? Well, you can certainly go take stock, as you're saying, and say, what's the story we're doing? We're the creators. How do we make it better? How do we really invest in this stuff? Or you say, hey, let's just add a 5-issue limited series here. That will, bring in 40,000 sales and everything just back to normal.
I completely agree. I mean, yes, they're just taking the lazy route.
Sure.
The problem is that's been their modus operandi for the last 15 years. Whatever the problem is that's causing diminished sales, let's just take the easy way out. Never fixing any of the actual problems. And then whatever new problem gets created by their solution to the previous problem, they figure out whatever the laziest way to counteract that is. And all they've done is stuck continual band-aids on bleeding arteries. And until they address it, it's going to keep happening, and they're just going to keep riding the roller coaster to the bottom.
They have a quality issue that I'm noticing. Like, out of all the Marvel comics that I read right now, which isn't as much as I used to because I just had to stop, there's Ghost Rider's pretty good. I like Moon Knight still. And then there's like Joe Fixit, which isn't in continuity and stuff like that. You still have this Spider-Man Craven's Hunt tie-in thing. I think it's the Lost Hunt. So there's a bunch of stuff out of continuity that's pretty decent, but really in continuity, it's just like it's Moon Knight and Ghost Rider. That's not enough to keep your publisher like going strong, and they're not fixing the quality problem. And certainly Donny Cates checking out, although I wasn't enjoying his Hulk run, and falling off of Thor really hurts as well. But there's no one to take over, and it feels like they lost all their talent along the way, Gabe. It feels like everyone went to Substack or just or creating their own comic books for the indie publishers, and there's no superstars left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, but there's no smoking gun or silver bullet to explain that. It's a confluence of things, right? It's lowering page rates. It's lack of communication from editorial. You're hearing that
Probably
story
editorial
over and
interference, telling them what stories they have to write. instead of
editorial
letting them create.
interference, right? I hear stories over and over again about writers submitting scripts, and what gets printed is vastly different from the script that they submitted. All kinds of problems, and then you get into this issue. I think the new story that came out either was this past week or the week before about how they're divvying up pay for events when they stretch multiple titles and who gets what amount of pay. I mean, that's ridiculous. If people do the work, they should get paid for it. Right. If you do the work, you should get paid for it.
That's a DC thing, but I completely agree with you. That's
right. And then the other thing I'm seeing, it's sort of tying this back to the event question, is I've noticed, especially over the last year, that events are not sequential. Where it used to be like, this is the big event. I mean, let's pick on, say Crisis on Infinite Earths or some kind of big Marvel event, where you had a series of issues that all tied the main plot together, and then the story would branch off into tie-ins that were tangential events within the main story, but weren't diverting the plot away from something else. Over the past year, that's changed, where you see now these alpha and omega issues, like for Dark Web, alpha and omega issues, where the stories would branch off into other titles like Ms. Marvel or X-Men and then come back again. But if you didn't keep up on those tie-ins, you completely miss major swaths of the story. But if you went over to Ms. Marvel as an example in Dark Web, nothing happened in that 2-part issue. That was garbage. There was nothing in there that was relevant to anything related to Dark Web. Yet if you go over to the Dark Web tie-in for X-Men, a major plot point for the event was resolved in that tie-in. And then it comes back. And it's like, so who am I supposed to pay attention to? Do I buy the tie-ins or not?
No,
is there a through line or not? And then it's completely lost. And so the events aren't even a complete through line anymore on the narrative. It's just a big mess, and people just are struggling to keep up and figure out what's going on.
Gabe, that's done intentionally to sell shit books that otherwise wouldn't sell.
Yeah,
their goal is to do that, to make one of the tie-ins not matter, 2 of the tie-ins, 3 of the tie-ins, and then one that actually does, to force you to buy all of them.
Yeah,
even
exactly
the
right.
stuff that wouldn't sell otherwise.
Right.
So what
exactly
what's
back
the
to
solution?
But back to Wes's question about the artists and the writers, what A-lister or even a B-lister writer would put up with that? Eventually, people get sick of it. They're sick of the inconsistent pay. They're sick of the changing page rates. They're sick of the lack of communication. They're sick of the lack of consistency about the product they're trying to create. What A-lister or B-lister would put up with that? Of course, going to Substack is more attractive. Of course, doing your own indie project is more attractive if you don't have to deal with the headaches. Creating a comic should not be a headache, and Marvel and DC have forgotten that.
You should, so bear in mind what I'm about to say. I have no knowledge of what the creator thinks. So this is my opinion and my opinion alone. But I talked about this on a video. One of the things that really frustrated me is you have Thunderbolts come out, and you have a MCU show, Thunderbolts, or a movie. I'm not sure what they're doing, but there's something coming out. It's a series that had 100 issues. Once upon a time, fondly remembered brand. You say you're going to do another one. You tie it into this Devil's Reign event. You kick it off. You get a pretty good artist on it. You put Zub on it for this comic, but right out the gate, you tell everybody it's 5 issues. Why would you do that? It absolutely sent a bad message for the comic. Several other comics that are 6 or 5 issues, they don't do that for. They let solicitations go out and get the sales, but they immediately signaled that that one was low. They didn't do a good job promoting it. And then you hop over to the other book, this Murder World thing he's doing. Here's a connected event where they decide every issue is going to be number one, which irritates the hell out of people. And then and this is the part that gets me the most. You go to the website, marvel.com website, to look at this Murder World little subpage they have. And when you click on see the summary, that you could see all the different books that are in it, which any collector would want to do to try and understand what's going on, goes to a dead link. It doesn't work. And a bunch of people pointed this out, including me, 3 months ago. I go back there last week, still dead. Nobody fixed it. And so when you see that kind of stuff, if you're a writer, if you're an artist, why are you giving it your all when they're not even going to promote your book? Now Zub, it seems like a real class guy. He always goes and pushes no matter what. But, if every creator's having that experience, what do you expect? And
Thunderbolts is actually good. I was shocked.
It's a good book. Yeah.
It's fun.
Murder World's been pretty good too. I think the other piece is we talk about art a lot and falling art standards and everything else, but 2 artists that I think most people would agree are pretty, at least whether you like their style or not, they're high-end artists. is Terry Dodson and and Pascal Ferry. Now, both guys have been doing comics for a long time. Ferry is kind of some people like his style, some people don't. But if you read, the Conquered Shores, the Namor book, which I enjoyed, by the way, but still, if you read that, the art is rough. And this is a guy who is a good artist. You go over to this week's Amazing Spider-Man with Dodson, it's incredibly rough. And he is a good artist. Nobody, I think, would claim that this guy is shitty. He's a quality good artist. And you look at some of these panels, and they're terrible. And
the coloring was really bad on that issue.
Yeah, and so
there was a Cougar book last week that looked like crap as well.
It does, but these are really good people. These are not schlub artists. These are really talented people. So what's going on when this art looks like this? Including, by the way, even the art that you used for the thumbnail here, the goofy Spider-Man face. That's older now, of course, but that's a good artist as well most of the time.
Dr. Strange 390.
I can answer this question.
Sure, well,
when you only pay them what's their equivalent currently of 4 hours worth of work instead of 8 hours for a page, you're going to get a 4-hour page. And it's going to be rough because they're not going to do any rendering. They're not going to do any finishes. They're not going to go back and fix their mistakes. They're just going to turn it in like that and move on to something that's still paid. Look, whatever their hourly, whatever they've determined the kind of their hourly rate is, okay, then you're going to get that much. Divide whatever your page rate is by their hourly rate. That's exactly how much work they're going to put into that page.
I mean, the only caveat with the ASM that just came out this week with the Dodsons is I get the impression that they were given the job in a rush because Zeb Wells had to step away to, according to the preface page, Zeb Wells had to step away to catch up on the arc, whatever that means. So I get the impression that they were told to given a rush job just to fill in the blanks until Wells can come back with his main story. So maybe there was something that was out of their control and they just did what they could with the time that they had. But I'm sure it still looks terrible.
I'm sure that's true too. The rates are low. I agree. Some of this stuff's just not where it should be. The timing is bad. They're letting the writers take too long in some cases. They're getting the material, the art late. They're asking for changes, with 24 hours to spare in some cases, or bringing somebody else to come in and make changes to the page, which we've seen happen a few times. So, I mean, there's all these things. It with everything, and I appreciate, Wes, how you teed this up. It is not a problem. It's 40 problems.
Agreed.
And, got to fix them all.
Yeah, everything we've been discussing, and it's nothing new. We've discussed. I've been coming on this channel for 2 years now, and I feel like we're saying the same things over and over again, just more frequently because we're seeing it more frequently. But everything that we're discussing, they're just symptoms of problems at the top. You've got leaders in positions, they don't understand business. They're not making sound business decisions. Purge has even covered how editors don't even know the sales of some of their own books. Like, how are you making quality business decisions if you don't even know the metrics of what you're selling? And then beyond that, we're talking about people that are in leadership positions not even getting back to people. Gabe mentioned basic communication. If you don't have either of those fundamentals at the top to kind of filter down, you're going to have a shitty business. I mean, it's not just comics, it's anywhere. And we've kind of referenced this and done this, but I don't know how many times we've said until they make changes at the top, you're not going to see changes in comics. And you've just kind of continued to see this slow downtrend of, quality. And I get quality subjective, but you could even say quality in terms of like how it's getting accomplished and the operational tasks that it's taking to get something done. But yeah, until you get leadership changes, you're not going to see changes.
It does feel like we've had this conversation before because we have.
Yeah.
And so good news for the people in the chat. We're going to be moving on in a moment to should they have aged up John Kent and is
and should Tom Taylor be placed back in Australia, and should Australia be cut off from the internet? The answer, by the way, to that is yes.
You miss his smile, Doc.
In the Weird Science Slack chat, we have a bingo card about all the things that we think are going to happen in 2023. One of the slots is whether or not John Kent is actually going to punch somebody. And I suspect that one won't get punched.
Wait, I would say yes, just not in John Kent's book.
Yes.
You might want to clarify.
Like when Tim Drake was good in Batman. But
I don't know. He's going in this little mini. He's going to the Injustice world. He's supposedly going to go to a world with Nazis on it. You don't think Taylor's going to slip in a picture of him punching a Nazi?
They'll
Obviously, this was a mini series that was gonna this same thing over at DC than it is for Marvel. I mean,
Sure.
they do it all the
Yeah.
time where they're this is a canceled series. Let's give this Iceman another 5 issues or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's what this Superman is. And now they're gonna have to deal with shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, all this stuff doesn't matter. That's why the Bishop comic. I mean, in the end, it doesn't matter. And that's not a good vibe to give off to your customers at all. You should at least have the illusion that something matters. But how do you feel about this for writers? So we complain about writers a lot, and certainly there's things that the writers do that are wrong. But I still struggle with, if you're a writer, whether you're good or bad, and somebody tells you, "Hey, here's a contract for 5 issues. Knock it out of the park, and if you do an amazing job, we'll give you 5 more." And or maybe we will forget to write you back and it will just end. Even if you're an amazing writer like that, the odds of you getting a great story, I think any great writer has a great idea, is going to save it for their own whatever, so their own Substack, their own whatever. Who can work well in that condition? It's a stupid place to be, right?
I mean, yes, and television isn't too different though. I mean, because when you come into television, television has changed now because you've got streaming services, and a lot of times things get written and filmed before they even ever air. But if you go back to like traditional TV, when it came on networks, you didn't know. Like usually your show would get picked up, and the goal was have like a 22, 24 episode run. But you were typically kind of getting approvals throughout that. It's not uncommon for shows to get picked up for what they would call back nines. Like, hey, you've got 13 episodes. We'll give you a back 9 if they do well. It's not uncommon. I think the problem is what we see is they're kind of misleading in a way of like, sometimes they don't even say you're getting a 5 issue. Sometimes they're like, hey, we're going to have you start this book. And then you think you've got like at least a 12 issue run. And then it's like, hey, it's 5 issues, or hey, it's 10, or hey, it's 7, or But
that's what blew me away about Thunderbolts. Given that they stealth through this stuff all the time, why in the world would you go out of your way to say this is a limited series?
Yeah, agreed.
And 5 issues is not good either. Mini series should be 3 issues, 2 extra issues, pads for a trade, and that's really what it is. Although Jim Zub, usually when he's writing 3 issues, 5 issues, 7 issues, each issue he tries to make worth reading, so it doesn't seem like filler within that storyline. So going back to him for a second, that's how you like, if you're going to do 5 issues, they should all mean something. But you can see in almost anybody's 6-issue arc or 5-issue arc where this is just some punching for the sake of punching. But
if you
go back in the day,
5's a bad number.
Well, I think
Strange Apparitions, which is I think a 5 issues story arc in Batman back under Denny O'Neil. Yeah, it's one continuous story that gets solved, but he beats 5 villains, and he beats a villain in each issue to fully flesh out the entire story, and they just make everything so boring and not worth your time. Should I wait
10 issues now or longer?
Oh, it's been 2 years.
But
2 years.
Yule's comment brings up a great point. It is more, to me anyway, it is more prevalent now than ever, where you can smell the publishers are just putting additional issues to pad. It doesn't feel like they had a complete story that was 3 issues, beginning, middle, and end, or it was 6 issues or 12 issues or an ongoing. It just feels like, this was really a 2-issue, like a 2-parter, and they padded it out to 6, because you get all this fluff, all this inconsequential nonsense through the issue, and people are starting to see it before the series even comes out. Because you read the solicit, which it might be good or might be terrible, and you get the premise of the story, and you're like, how are you going to stretch that out to 12 issues? And then, for example, I'll give you, Tom King's Human Target. That is a 4-issue story at best. That is a 4-issue story, but somehow it gets 12. And if you've read the last 6 after that long hiatus, it's a lot of fluff. The story goes nowhere, and people are starting to smell it early.
I mean, like the Hellfire Gala, that is a 3-page story that got padded out to like 20 issues. So everybody they're not dealing with idiot children anymore as their customer base. They're dealing with people, let's be honest.
Kids wouldn't put up with this crap either, Doc.
No, I understand that, but the adults that they're dealing with. I mean, yeah, we're all kind of fucking stupid, but we're not that dumb. And eventually you try the same trick on us. You can't Wile E. Coyote us this many times. I mean, eventually Charlie Brown stops trying to kick the football.
Eventually, the Acme Dynamite blows up in the Coyote's face.
Yes.
To the what's wrong with Marvel. This is something Marvel has done more than DC that is a problem. This decompression, where if you look at some of these things that they've done, including, by the way, go to the first Hellfire Gala, they're going to terraform Mars. Now, I don't know. As a longtime X-Men reader, that wasn't a huge move the needle moment for me. But if you did that whole thing in one issue, it would have more of an impact.
Yep.
When you decompress it out to 14 issues and you're making jokes about Captain America's costume and other nonsense, it lowers the impact of some of these big moments. So even when they come up with something that in theory is a bigger storyline moment, the fact that it's stretched out with so many issues, which is all about a play to collectors who, you know, I asked who are the idiots who are still buying this stuff? The collectors who are trying to keep the runs intact. That's who.
Except
and so they're going
to,
they're going to buy 12 issues. The Ten of Swords thing, they're going to buy every issues of that event. When in reality, if you're doing a tight story that was going to appeal to a new reader or kid or whoever it might be, you do that in 3 or 4. That's a trap that Marvel in particular is making right now.
So we do have the viewers speaking up. Let's see what we got in the super chats. We got plenty of them. Miss Maria says, has the Marvel execs ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie? They should.
It's a good book.
Classic.
I'm going to go with no.
They can use anything on marketing and storytelling.
Yeah.
How to write comics the Marvel way would probably help as well. As far as
here's a quick tip: if you ever want to know if somebody's going to be a good writer, ask them what books they read. If they tell you they don't read books, you know they're not going to be a great writer.
Caleb says, if you don't know, that's fine. I saw that Proud Family clip everyone is talking about, and yeah, keep kids away from Disney. I haven't seen anything from Proud Family. I've only heard, generally speaking, what it is.
Show designed to get controversy gets controversy.
Yeah, so I wouldn't watch that with or without my kids. That guy who wrote that canceled Luke Cage story, who is he and what does he do and what was the story going to be about? He's a writer from Britain named Hoche Anderson, and it was going to be playing off the well, we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, but the death of
George Floyd. And in the story, I guess the mother would hire Luke Cage to protect the police officer. But I imagine that's like the generic, like acceptable version of the story. There's a reason they didn't publish it. And we will definitely be getting to that. Common Sense says, Purge, you met Carrie Andrews. How do you think he would feel that Marvel and Alyssa Wong screwed him by sidelining Pay to prefer Lin Lee to be Iron Fist? And you got my info about the Marvel editorial.
Yeah, I did. Carrie wouldn't care. I mean, in the sense of one thing I like about Carrie a lot is that he does a really good job mentally of this thing is mine and this thing is something I'm doing for someone else. And when he's taken a job that's somebody else's toys, he does not get emotionally invested. So, I mean, he would say, something like, well, that seemed like a waste. We built. He
did set it up pretty well.
Yeah, he set it up great. And I think, you do that, but there's a lot of this stuff. I mean, we talked with Joe Casey and he talks about how he set up America Chavez. And it's like, we set her up during this Vengeance series and then completely left turn with the Gabby series. Why did they do that? But in order to keep yourself sane as a creator, you have to go, I was paid a job and I took my check and I deposited it and it's not mine. And I'm going to do better with my own stuff.
Hopefully I'll get a royalty.
in fairness, though, half the problems with the comic industry is the creators not giving a shit about stuff that they're getting paid for. That isn't.
He's not saying he didn't care about the story.
No,
I didn't say that. Yeah.
What they do afterwards, he has no control over, so he can't worry about that.
I understand that, but an overall lack of passion is still an overall lack of passion.
It is, but you're right. But that's not the situation. I do think it's healthy. If you're a creator writing something on behalf of somebody else, you need to be able to detach from it. It isn't yours. And we've seen some of these creators. I'm blanking on the guy now, but with Black Lightning, the creator Black Lightning, who's Oh, okay, nobody goes. But anyway, the creator of Black Lightning, the original.
The guy that
Morning,
lives in
Isabella.
Cleveland.
The one that they were going to go to his house when he gave his address away.
He loses his mind constantly over changes to the character, and it's like, man, you made that for DC, you got your check. You care
Tony
about the
Isabella.
work you're doing, but then move on. Yes,
It's a great story too. It's a really good opener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Josh McDonald. So I've muted a few people, but Josh, don't unmute because that was absolutely you. As soon as I hit the mute button on you, it stopped.
Phew.
Thought it was me
My
for
goodness.
a second.
That
I said
was
Tony.
right
Oh,
away.
no, never mind.
Well, I said it first.
Wraith7 says the problem with Marvel Comics is that they are telling what if, fan fiction, and other stories that should never be told in the main continuity.
Yeah,
That is
I
a
agree.
valid point.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, most of their comics are basically a what if.
I mean, the what if concept was a good concept, and the multiverse and some of the stuff visiting occasionally was a good idea. It's as a monthly thing is a bad idea. You shouldn't. A monthly what if comic is great. All the comics being what if is a bad idea.
And I mean, look, what it means is there is nothing matters then, because you could just do whatever the hell you want every month, bring in some variant, mashup, nonsensical bullshit thing every single month. And honestly, it goes back to Silver Age Superman. That's where it ends up again, where
All right.
he just gets a new power to fix whatever it is every month.
Gary,
Silver
Nerdy Girl
Superman is
creates.
awesome.
Morning, guys. Everything wrong with Marvel. Wes, you're going to need at least a month to cover that. Yes, we won't be able to cover everything in depth, but we can have a general conversation about it. Have a good time. Gallup says, do you think it's due to arrogance that they think Disney has infinite wealth that they can do whatever they want? Cough, Dan Slott, VDIL, Jordan White. I do think there's a certain amount of arrogance by the Marvel staff that they think they're bulletproof. Purge.
Yeah, well, it's existed for you. You talk to any retailer, anybody in distribution. The most arrogant company to work with has been Marvel, and this has been a consistent story since the '90s. They're always the pain in the ass. Every now and then you get a good ambassador who tries to change that. I think when Joe Q first came into the company, he tried hard to fix that, but then we kind of got back there again.
What did Marvel Comics call you recently? Say your channel was single-handedly destroying the comic book industry?
Yeah, well, sure.
Egregious harm?
Egregious harm, yeah.
I need X kind of headlines.
Are we good
Oh
now?
my goodness.
Yeah,
You're
everybody,
better now.
That's better. Yeah.
everybody loves me. Yeah. It's how about
Egregious
Dan
harm.
Slott though? He like does that book? I don't know. You old that book has negative heat right now in comics.
Trash. And not only that, I feel like his coming out on Twitter and not coming out when he started tweeting all that nonsense. I can't remember what it was anymore. I was talking
About
about
She-Hulk,
it, but
yeah.
yeah. I what are you trying to just get some? What do they call it? Just
X-Clock heat.
Clout.
You're just trying to get some clout. I know. I'm
Clout.
Yeah,
and
X-Pac, yeah.
it's for your crappy book, and that's I'm sorry, everybody out there that's going to hate this comment. You can't put Mark Bagley on a book and expect it to sell anymore. Okay. Especially if Dan Slott's on it.
not like that. Not with that combo. I agree. No, but
Horrible. And I mean, the whole thing is, they worked really hard to get Peter out of that almost immediately, at least as much as I read, and it just keeps going on. At least they got an Humberto Ramos cover out of it. So
Well, you
there's
can
that.
you can put Bagley on certain things. You can put him on with an unoffensive or unassuming writer, a writer that doesn't matter, that doesn't have anything good or bad. Again, like but Bagley won't offset writers that already have baggage.
Right.
Not
Exactly.
anymore.
I mean, it just doesn't. It's like you got to team up Ron Lim with Ron Mars so they can do a Silver Surfer or something thing.
yeah, that works.
But don't put Ron Lim on the main X book, or don't do a secondary X book and put him on it. Don't put a secondary Spider-Man book out there. Like whoever was doing Thunderbolts should probably be doing that book, and then Bagley should have been on the Thunderbolts book.
Totally agree.
There's even well, I guess with Spider-Man there's synchronicity also, but
in the chat, look at these people. So Dan Slott's got one book. It's forgettable, and whether you like the book or don't like the book, it has zero heat in the comic shop right now. Vita is gone. We're really, you're dealing with Jordan there.
Yeah.
Him and his violin. That's all we got.
Danny Lore's still
Or ukulele. Got it wrong.
Ukulele.
Damn.
Goblin says, I read Alyssa Wong's Iron Fist, and it constricts everything in her IGN interview. She erases Wu Al-Shi's husband, Liu Kang, the real one who broke tradition, and erases Danny's knowledge of all Iron Fists.
Good. That's what was supposed to happen all along.
I read the first couple of issues, and I didn't like it, so I stopped reading it.
Well, again, nobody's reading this book.
Yeah,
no, that's
no.
Look, I can't.
It wasn't offensive, but what it did do is it completely eradicated everything that made Iron Fist special.
Yeah.
Here's
that
the
sounds
problem
offensive.
with Marvel. This is the real problem with Marvel. You don't put good artists on books. There's a new Captain Marvel that's going to be coming out. Chris Bachalo does a cover for it. Why isn't he in that book? Like, that would sell the book potentially, better than whoever's doing it. Same thing with all the other ones. And you can not want to pay them, and you could, maybe they don't take too much time or whatever. But I always know immediately when you don't put somebody good on a book that you don't care about the book.
Because there you
go.
Because there is a 0% chance that even Chris Bachalo and his amazing art can make Carol Danvers a decent selling title.
Totally true, but I would definitely pick up one of the books eventually. I would do.
You'd go 20% on that book for sure.
I've read so many shitty books because of good art, and if you don't have a good illustrator on it or an amazing writer, you shouldn't even put it out. Really,
you're talking about the 90s there now.
There's a lot of that, like before Heroes Reborn or whatever it was. There was a lot of. Some of my favorite writers did the shittiest Daredevils ever.
That's true.
Goblin says, do you think Marvel doing stories back in the past with Danny, Ketch, Storm, new Fantastic Four, Gambit, and Joe Fixit is a sign that they're desperate? What is that all about, Purge? Because it feels like an alternative to in continuity stories. It's been wonderful for me because they're at least, for the most part, worth reading because they get good writers on them. Even though the limited series is that them just throwing something at the wall and see if anything works.
No, it's two things, and it's smart. Some credit where credit's due. What's something Marvel is doing right? They know that some of their audience are collectors who have been collecting books for a long time. They know these books are going to hit either the nostalgia bone or just satisfy that urge, and so they're getting them commissioned. It's actually a business decision. It's a smart one. It's a simple one. I don't think this is any kind of masterclass 3-dimensional chess level business decision, but it's a good one. And they're meeting the needs of you and people like you who've read comics for a long time. The other thing it does do, in fairness, and I will say this is another good thing because rarely do they do the right thing here, but it gives them a chance to bring some of these creators back who can't do a monthly book for health reasons or age or whatever it is, and it gives them a chance to have a paycheck and something. So right now you got Alan Davis on this Avengers book. That is awesome. That is a great title out right now. And Alan Davis, I think I would like to believe Marvel would love to have him on a monthly book, but he can't do a monthly book right now. So getting a limited series with Alan Davis, awesome. That's great. So if you can, as Marvel, always have 2 or 3 of these again, you're publishing 80 books a month. Mm-hmm. Can you do 5 of these books a month? Like in this vein, that'd be a good idea.
And what we're going to get
David was writing circles all over the writers there for a while on Maestro, and then even Joe Fixit's good.
Sure. Yep. No, almost all these are really good. I mean, it pains me to say it. I think Claremont's slightly, has gone to the well many times for some of these guys.
Well, no. This is something that I realized about Chris a long time ago. Chris is not good on short-term storytelling. His only real strength is long-term. So unless you're giving him 40 issues to work with minimum, don't even bother.
But not long term like writers today,
No.
like Hickman or Al Ewing, where there's this as long as I'm going to be on this book, this one story is going to be told.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
there's lots of stories told within those 40 issues with the Claremont.
Exactly.
And I'm not even saying it's good necessarily.
Yeah, you're gonna have
tie some shit up, man.
You're gonna have some stinkers in there. You will. But his thing is that, I mean, I saw it with like that X-Men Black, that Magneto issue that he did. I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah.
And everything else, when he has limited pages to work with, and he knows that going in, I think he's just not an effective writer.
No,
Well,
real
we'll
note
see
though.
3Ds.
To conclude on that, so it's a good idea. Do keep in mind it's a short-term idea, so you can't keep doing this forever. I mean, you're feeding a lot of collectors, but at some point you're going to have to flip some of this into monthly if you were to build back up that audience. So it does have limited returns.
Wolfstein 3D says their business model is outdated. They don't have writers that can sell by name recognition, and they value most of their IPs over the past 10 years.
I challenge to suggest any writer that would bring the masses to comics right now, even the lapsed people. I challenge you.
I don't know, man.
And
Jonathan
realistically,
Hickman
don't just bring
probably
up
isn't
some
a big
dead
name
or-
to like old school writers, but once people heard how good his X-Men was, they came back.
Mm-hmm.
But they heard about the quality of
That's
the
what I'm
book,
talking about.
not the writer himself.
Right. I think the thing is like people have just been burned by publishers too much. Like they have comics is an industry where as publishers you're asking people to invest, and they're 90% of their actions are saying don't invest. You know, and I think that's where the problem comes in.
Well, I mean, but the other part of that too is the audience. Okay, let's say Claremont, right? Let's say Claremont's going to come back for an ongoing X title, whatever it
I don't
is.
think that would do it.
Well, I know. I'm just as an example.
McFarlane on Spider-Man.
How many people are still left who are into comics who remember who Claremont is, and where could they get his comics unless they had the wherewithal to know who he was, and then knew where their comic book shop was and knew to go get it. The part of the problem isn't necessarily finding the writers that have name recognition that can bring people back. It's also the other part of that equation too, which is availability, distribution. Are you reaching an audience who doesn't know that those things even exist, and all the problems that go along with it? There is no writer that exists that can branch out that just by the name recognition would have people coming from all over the place. It's still trapped within that little small LCS ecosystem, which is getting smaller. And then so if they're not putting them in retail stores or putting them in Scholastic, mailers or whatever else, it almost doesn't matter. You could get you could get Alan Moore to come back saying, I'm going to write Ms. Marvel. Alan Moore on Ms. Marvel. I want to see that. Even if that happened, unlikely would ever happen.
Yeah, terrible things would happen to Ms. Marvel.
He would. And that would be
too young.
I would read the hell out of that book. But the point of that is the only people who would even know that what was happening and understand the significance of that pairing would be people that are in this chat.
Yeah,
and it's just
right.
it's too small of an audience to make a big difference.
It's momentum. Momentum is hard to achieve. The car, it's a car going down the road. It's very easy to coast when you're up at 70 miles an hour. The entire comic industry has slowed down to 5 miles an hour. And so those big names, Donny Cates probably still moves the needle with those fans you're talking about, Hickman, but it's a short list and it's shrinking. And they've got to get into more places. Sorry.
Wants to know, will we ever get a West versus Purge video on their differing opinions on the divisive 12-issue run of Jeff Thorne and Green Lantern? If I'm going to do a Purge video, I'm probably not going to waste it on that Green Lantern. I've already done 2 videos on it.
I think we should do. We should
be a sales analysis one also.
Let's
so
do
you can do all
and
of
I. Wes Perch and Jeff Thorne can come in to kind of referee it. Well, no,
I like that.
We could come into analysis, but we could do that. I came
That would
to a
be cruel.
conclusion with
That would
this
be very
book.
cruel.
Everyone I know who liked that series, and there's people who do, yes. They're all people who are reading kind of the 80s millennium. They were really into that era, that Legion of Superheroes kind of mode in the late 80s.
Did they like the art?
All of us were
Exactly.
frustrated with the art of kind
It's
of
so bad.
bouncing around with creators and everything. But everybody who was really into that era of Legion of Superheroes, Jon Stewart stuff they were doing, appreciated that Thorne tied into that. Unfortunately, DC has kept none of that in anybody's mind. So for, I would say, 95% of the audience, they had no idea what he was trying to do there.
And then a year later, they'll put out a one-shot finishing everything, right?
That was so
Yeah,
strange.
while simultaneously ignoring everything in the other book and just doing something else.
Exactly. They got rid of it all, and then they had a reminder issue.
Yeah, no, it's stupid. No, commit to
This
the
is so
bid or not.
confusing.
But why in the world did DC not do a zero issue or something going, hey, all this shit that we're about to do, this is what we're referring to. This is what all this other powers and the stuff that Stuart has. This is why we're trying to. Almost everybody I'll bet in this chat likes continuity. We say we want it in comics, but then when moments come that something is going to continuity, the publisher isn't even doing anything with that. So anyway, just frustrating.
You're tied into stuff from 30 years ago. The memory gets hazy, Perch. I'm not a young
I
man
don't blame
anymore.
the fans. That's why DC needs to put out hey, you remember these?
I'm rapidly
giant
moving
unresolved
towards
plot
45
threads?
years old.
Yeah, well, put something out. This is what we're doing. Why wouldn't you do that as a publisher? It's stupid.
Yeah, but Perch and I will do a video again. I don't know if it'll be that one, but we'll see something happen.
Something.
He doesn't hate me like everyone thinks. You don't hate
Oh
me.
no,
right,
we
Perch?
both.
Well,
yeah,
he said it.
We absolutely
Yeah.
feud all over the place.
That's
yeah.
it.
There's a problem, as I said, I can't do the kind of thumbnails you do. It's just I have a different thing going on. Everybody's like, well, clearly you two hate each other.
You were dogging my thumbnails?
No, I said they won't work for me. I said they work for you. That's
It's
it.
hard to do thumbnails with your face on them if you don't show your face.
Agreed, right? I started doing well, and I also started because you were giving these expressions. I went and grabbed a bunch of Kevin McGuire art where they give kind of crazy expressions, and I put it on some of my thumbnails, and it's like, oh, you're clearly punking him. I'm like, I'm trying to have fun, dumbass.
I don't care if you were fucking me, to be honest with that one. I don't like the thumbnails, Perch. I don't like doing thumbnails like that.
Yeah, but
But
they
it's
sell.
proven that they work.
I said that in the
Right.
video. I'm like, he look at the numbers. Why wouldn't he do this? And people are dumb.
I mean,
I wish
like
I could
staring
just
at that
do a
handsome
nice,
mug.
really like, meta thumbnail where you had to pay attention to it to get what I was even getting at. But that does not work on YouTube.
No, I've definitely joked about those thumbnails for sure. But it is a
well,
love.
you
I wouldn't
should.
be, look, why would I be here? Wes is great.
Well, I am great. Thank you. You're all right yourself, Perch.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're not
People
half
just-
bad.
People just need to
I
rub
am
one out
great.
every now and then and stop worrying about it.
Common sense says, yes, Gabe. Like Lin Lee, Gary Stu needs to rely on Axe to make a story, and Miss Marvel need to rely on Dark Web to have a story because Marvel editorial. That's what it felt like with that Dark Web Miss Marvel. They just wanted to have a Miss Marvel comic, but they knew they couldn't sell it, so they said, "What if we put Dark Web on it?"
Yeah, that Ms. Marvel tie-in was probably one of the more egregious. That'll be the word for the day, egregious. One of the more egregious examples, because it's not like there was already an ongoing Ms. Marvel title. It had already been canceled and was off the shelves. They brought that 2-issue series back specifically to act as a tie-in for Dark Web. And then when you read it, it had almost nothing to do with Dark Web. And the writer on that book was the person who was the writer on the Ms. Marvel Disney Plus show, or at least a couple of the episodes in that Plus show, which in my estimate was not great. It was okay, but it wasn't great. So it seemed like when this goes back to the point I was talking about earlier, is people can start to smell when you're just putting in fluff and things that don't matter just to pad stuff out. To me, that smells a lot like they had some contractual obligation. The guy agreed to write the episodes if you give him a comic, and they were just trying to do something just to fill space. And that's not going to work in anybody's favor long term. And it's certainly not going to do anything to elevate the character, who could probably use that boost because she is not as popular as probably she could be if she was given more of the proper attention.
Callum says the surname is Ferry. Poor person. You spelled it wrong. It's Ferry. Pascal Ferry.
Yeah, Pascal Ferry.
Yeah, you're thinking of it like in a wrong light, sir. Lade says, so Perch, I got Wes and Doc locked in to reviewing Hellcat #1 in March. Might you be willing to take up the challenge? He'll bribe you with a beer.
I mean, I got somebody bitching at me on YouTube right now that I review comics that are bad, and that makes them CG somehow. But look,
You get that too? Why would you read it if you don't like it? It's like, I have a comic book channel.
Well, for fuck's sake, I mean, if you're coming to my channel and you're like, wow, this guy's really intense and pissy about things, I feel bad for you. But yeah, I mean, look, I already
Fucking
bit
intensity, yeah.
there you go. I bit the
Dark Perch.
I bit the Chris Cantwell bullet with Namor book, which I enjoyed. So I don't feel like, if I go into Hellcat, I feel like I'm really pushing my luck there.
Yeah, you don't want to bribe Purge with beer. You want to bribe him with scotch.
Yeah, you got to go Scotch. You got to go classy.
Yeah, this guy's got a smoking jacket and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Cobbett
sure.
says, if Tom Taylor uses Injustice to market his John Kent miniseries, he's desperate. Now Tom Taylor knows his first comic didn't sell well.
I don't know.
He's
about
trying to use
that,
Injustice to market John Kent.
He was saying
gotta
that
cover
his Injustice, he's known the story and the end of it ever since he started way back when. So my only question to Tom Taylor
I don't
is,
believe that for a second.
does John Kent factor into this also?
Yeah. I don't think John
Because
Kent existed
when you
he
started
created
that, I don't know
Injustice
if
number
Bendis
one.
had screwed that character up yet or not.
No. I
Yeah.
think there's a cover that's an Injustice cover for the John Kent book.
No,
I think
yeah.
Okay.
But he came out and said, like on
No, I
Twitter,
know.
that
But yeah, I know what
I
you're
think
talking
it was
about.
maybe
I'm
something
referring-
Wes had me read. I don't know. Why
Yeah,
did I read
probably.
this?
I'm referring to the question or the common sense's comment.
Oh,
I
I
think
see.
he's strictly referring to the cover that is the Injustice cover for the John Kent book to hopefully try to shift some issues that way.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if Injustice is really as big a seller as it was at one time.
No.
This is really late.
This is very
Everybody-
late.
This is like
No,
putting out
but-
a John Stewart one shot.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I agree with common sense on this one. It feels not a cash grab is not the right word, but it feels like they're trying to hook into nostalgia to prop up John Kent
Yeah.
because his original title didn't go well. And it's amusing to me that when that announcement came out, it was met with what I saw a lot of groans and eye rolls and people sort of imagineering what's going to happen to John Kent when his Injustice father Superman finds out he's gay. They were imagining all the different ways he would kill him. Like, I don't think this is the reaction Taylor expected, but sure, why not?
Yeah.
Let's go for that.
Ryan Wilson says Marvel has a new crop of no-named writers. Well, so does DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marvel's
hasn't been going
strategy,
well.
though, their strategy right now is, and the firm belief in that company is that the brand is what's mattered. The IP is what matters. So Spider-Man is what everybody cares about. And you could put, nonsense people into that book. If there wasn't all this heat about AI art, I guarantee you they'd be shoving something out where a computer was writing and drawing everything.
Feels like that. Have you read any Steve Fox comics, Perch?
Yeah.
Pretty terrible, huh?
It none of that seems to go anywhere.
No.
It's not even
like-
that bad. It's not offensively bad. Like I miss Gabby. Because you read that stuff and you're like, wow, this is a train wreck. Like
This
this is
got
just
published.
terrible writing. Like it's just bad on every level. Now you read it and it's like, well, they're walking around. I don't know. It's a perfectly good
Having
story about them
sushi.
walking around.
Paul Ebb says, not the biggest James Gunn fan, but coming out and at least talking about runs, etc., was a good move for comics. Perch side, he loved the show, Wes.
Yeah, it's good. He talked
Certainly
about
sold
comics. It was
some-
good. All comics I hate, but it's good.
You hate All-Star Superman?
No, okay, that's not fair. Yeah, no, All-Star Superman. was
You
fine.
hate Grant Morrison's Batman and Robin? I love that one.
It's not going to be Batman. It's not going to be that Batman and Robin. It's a crossover.
We're talking about the comics he put out.
Yeah, but it's not going to be Nightwing and Damian. It's Bruce
No.
and Damian.
Well, no, but his run started with Bruce and Damian. The
It did,
whole
but they're
Son of
gonna-
Batman. That's not my favorite story.
It's not my favorite story that either. Yeah.
Perch hates Swamp
You didn't
Thing
like
and
Alan
Authority,
Moore's
though.
Saga of the Swamp Thing,
Yeah.
Perch?
Like,
Okay.
heard it here
just stop.
first, folks.
That's
Or-
my second favorite comic of all times.
Or Ellis's Authority.
Look, I went for I'm just trying to put out the
Supergirl.
cheap Tom King joke to get you some hits.
Oh, I like
Yeah.
True Grit. It's just, it's not Supergirl.
Woman of Tomorrow is a huge red flag. I don't know what Gunn was thinking on that one. I don't know how he thought anybody would receive that well. I will at least say that I
Tom King
like
did.
I at least like the variety of Gunn's lineup. It's not strictly
Agreed.
Batman, Wonder
Yeah,
Woman,
that's true.
Superman.
I don't
It's
know.
got
It
some-
is
it's got some
strictly
stuff
the
in there.
British invasion of Vertigo.
Yeah. Whenever they moved into DC
Like,
Comics,
there's only one writer he's missing, right? The guy that did
he's doing.
Doom Patrol. Who was it? Before
Grant
Grant
Morrison.
Morrison. It was before him. The other
He-
person,
No,
he's-
that
I
wasn't
can't remember.
Vertigo.
he's
Give Rachel Pollack some money. She could use it.
he's missing Garth Ennis.
That's okay. We're missing Garth Ennis. I was missing one of the writers.
Wow,
But
comic
I
company
at
missing
least,
Garth Ennis.
like that he's got more stuff in there. He's exploring the larger catalog. That's a positive in my book. Whether or not he can pull it off is a different story.
No, he could.
Great Thick 7. In an interview, Claremont pointed out that one of the problems in comics is that the Marvel Universe is no longer the world outside your window.
Yeah, I disagree hard.
I disagree. I agree completely. It's tried to become DC Comics with how celestial and cosmic it has become. Everything.
I love DC Comics down to my core, Doc, and trust me, what you're reading in Marvel is nothing like DC Comics.
No, my point is where everything, like your celestial level characters being so regularly seen in the comics is poor. It doesn't work for Marvel because
we never saw celestial characters in Fantastic Four.
You would, but you only saw them. You saw them
every other issue.
No, it wasn't. It was rather infrequently. You saw a lot. They went all over the place. They'd have celestial characters, then they'd have Black Panther, and then they'd have
the celestial character, most likely going back to Galactus.
Then they go to some other multiverse, and then they go.
I would be honest, Doc. I don't think that's what's ruining Marvel Comics at all.
Yeah, and
I think that's what's ailing Marvel.
Yeah. Look, I think the problem with comics right now is that they are trying to make it a little bit too much world outside the window. And the problem is the window is New York and there's no other window.
Yeah.
And I think comics are best when they are fantastical and they're doing lots of different things. And they're truly, telling good stories, not trying to worry about, hey, we should really do something to tie into the January 6th insurrection. How can we make a story around that? Like, nobody wants that.
We really need to get something in about mosque culture.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what?
Let's talk about the Sharma restaurant. I mean, so I think this panel knows I'm friends with G. Willow Wilson, who lives in Seattle. I very, very nice person. I take whatever you want out of that. The latest issue of Poison Ivy, it's like it's a tour of Seattle. It's Harley and Ivy holding hands, walking around Seattle. They go to Pike Place, they go to Pioneer Square, they go I'm reading this thing, I'm like, a fucking travel book. It's bizarre. I don't know. Maybe if you didn't live there, it doesn't hit you. But this thing, it's just what is this comic right now?
32 Flavors of Nick Weiser says, I got nothing to add to the conversation. Just enjoy listening.
Sweet.
Well, thank you very much. If you didn't know, 32 Flavors of Nick Weiser has the best hair in all of comic book YouTube. If you haven't checked out his channel, I highly suggest it. He's absolutely metal. What?
Nice.
He's not going bald. He's got long hair. It's luxurious. You can tell he uses conditioner.
Seem to be bald.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's lucky.
Yeah, that's not like a full head or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's not
Tommy
better,
reviews.
Josh.
In your comic book free media, the woman said there is no success story in comics. Did she not know about Eric July with I Saw Him, Pale West and Pale? I'm assuming he's talking about Heidi McDonald wanting sales charts. I thought you owned her pretty well on that one, sir.
Thank you very much.
I highlighted it on the channel.
Yeah, I noticed that. I was like, oh man, this is like legit. This isn't just this shit. No, I did. When I wasn't even. I was just being silly, that day. But
you were given no fucks, and I appreciated it.
Well, it just seemed like a stupid comment to say that people would want to see their sales, and then no baseball hitter wants to know that they're hitting 200. You know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah, cancel me. I mean, they know that they're selling or that they're only hitting 200. They all need to see it in writing so that everybody. Comic stores don't tell people when their comics are selling horribly. They don't want people to know that they overbought and that they're sitting on stuff. So if we're going to lie about that, I just don't think that the creators would want to lie to themselves. I mean, continue lying to yourselves so that you don't have to see the end result. That would not be good.
Purge, is Heidi McDonald losing it?
I mean, she's working with what she's got.
that would. You can't lose it when you didn't have it in the first place.
All right. Seamus McCallahan. What a beautiful name. Tom King came by my LCS and signed a pile of Supergirl comics so they could be given away as movie promotions. Anyone else see stores have this happen?
Well, when you can't sell them, you give them away. You sign
No,
them and then give them away, and you make them actually worth less.
He's been doing this, and good for him.
Yeah.
No, I mean, whatever, good for him. I think, although I will say, a creator came into my shop at one point, just started signing stuff, and I'm like, what the fuck? You just, you should ask.
Back
first.
off, sir.
Please ask first before you start signing books.
We have nuts come in here sometimes.
Yeah. But no, this is. I wish. Look, credit where credit's due. Good for him. I have more creators going into the store, signing stuff, shaking hands. Without having to do a formal appearance, just walking in. I think this is good stuff. By the way,
I've heard you have to stop Joe Corallo from signing your comic book if you have
He'll
one
sign
of his
everything.
comics.
Yeah.
You just grab it out of your hand and start signing it for you.
I like Frank Miller's signatures at this point are just ludicrously insane. Like he just tries to cover the entire cover with a marker. It's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I wish I liked it. Okay, I do not like Tom King, but I do like this move.
Yeah.
Well, anything to get a little publicity and some traffic into the LCS, I'm all for it. These guys have done so much harm; they should do something good.
And that comic book sucks ass. So I mean, I'm glad he's trying to support it.
You've got to feel bad for that. Comment says, my info on Iron Fist is from someone who met Wong in New York City Comic Con, and Wong said her Iron Fist was supposed to be ongoing, but Marvel editorial canceled, and Axe is the only way to wrap up Purge. You talked to Mark Penincia.
I have, but there's a lot going on in this super chat. Look, I don't know what the background is on Wong. I do know that
Anything she writes is going to be a miniseries, whether they announce it or not.
Yeah, I mean, it was billed, at least what we were told, as an ongoing. A lot of these things were, but the sales weren't there, and it got canceled, and I don't know. I'm not quite sure the question, but I will be happy to answer something.
You talked to Mark?
Yeah, I've talked to Mark.
Lovely gentleman?
Yeah. A lot of the people, look, that's a wacky thing about this stuff is very rarely does and this isn't true with Mark either way, but the Twitter persona rarely matches the real life persona. Rarely. Generally,
I can tell you right now, Robert Meditti was just as pleasant in person, or at least over StreamYard here, as he was on Twitter.
Well, okay, so fair enough. The people who are antagonistic on Twitter do not match their real life. People who are nice on Twitter tend to be nice. You don't get the reverse. That'd be pretty cool, though. A really cheerful person on Twitter and a complete raging asshole.
Wow, you're a douchebag.
That'd be amazing.
In fairness, most of the people that are raging assholes on Twitter are giant fucking pussies and would never do it in real life because they're giant pussies, and it would probably involve them getting punched in the mouth.
Doc, you're the only guy that I know whose Twitter persona transfers right over into YouTube.
Probably.
Look, so a lot of these guys are super introverts. Mark Brooks is, if you meet him in real life, is an introvert. No matter what kind of tough guy persona you see on Twitter.
I thought he was an MMA fighter.
No, he is not he's way more mild in real life. It is nothing like Twitter.
If he runs into you, he's like, I'm here to do two things. Back ass and read comic books. I read comics.
Hey, you know what though? Hold on.
Trace a comic also. Gotta get the cover out.
Back to Common Sense's.
We talked to
Back to Common Sense's super chat here, though. But I think this is he does point out one thing here. Okay, obviously anything written by Alyssa Wong it's a mini series, regardless of what they say. That's obviously true. We all know that. And the whole thing with Axe is the only way to wrap it up. Here's the thing that I need to tell Marvel and DC and everyone else. When it already sucks and doesn't sell, you actually don't need to wrap it up. In fact, wrapping it up is probably the worst thing you can do, because then it's being wrapped up by the same person that shit the bed in the first place. Instead, you leave it completely open-ended. Maybe 5 years from now, somebody that's actually talented will end up on that title. You can relaunch it. And maybe, just maybe, that person that's actually talented can go back, connect to that thing that's now not wrapped up because it's still all open-ended, and actually make that story retroactively halfway decent.
In the long ago, we used to see people come onto books that were lame so that they could cut their teeth show that they can do a monthly. Jim Lee on Alpha Flight, Warren Ellis writing Hellstorm, all the, just to name a couple. And then maybe that title still cancels, and then they move on to something, and then they've got their bad pages out of them, and then they can go on and do, or Warren Ellis, his best pages. And then, later on, they're ready for that next book. Or what about the hand holding, like Matt Fraction when Brubaker was on a book, or so on and so forth.
Mentorship.
Burn used
would
to hold Mignola's hand, it seemed
Right,
like.
well, that's why you can't do that today, is because there aren't enough of the mentors to help bring the mentees up to let them know how to improve.
But
where
at
they
least
make
a
mistakes.
All right, guys, we gotta
cut
move
her
on.
teeth on
Hey,
another
finish
book
these
that
up.
was,
But Wes, he brings up a great idea, which is why can't you have Warren Ellis on a comic and he's doing some stuff, and then Warren Ellis could go get some people, I don't know, 18, 19-year-old girls or something, and
or at least
come on, they
Matt
could write with
Fraction.
them. And then
he wasn't
doesn't-
hand holding.
he could handhold, and then maybe more.
because that's what Brian Bendis
That's
did.
not where I was going with that, but okay.
It seems like that'd be a good idea.
Because that's what Brian Bendis did to the entire Marvel universe with
Sure.
everyone that's now currently at DC.
Yeah, especially Matt Fraction's wife. Anyway, let's go.
Let's keep moving, fellas, or we're only going to get one topic done. Calvin says, is it possible that editorial can cancel an ongoing comic into a miniseries, even though the comic was solicited to be a miniseries? Ongoing to a
yes.
mini.
Well, John Ken Superman kind of fits that model. I mean, right?
Okay.
We cancel his ongoing and moved him into a mini, right?
All right.
For sure they can do this.
And Poison Ivy's an ongoing and was a miniseries.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually common in the 80s. You would have, Power Pack start out that way. A lot of comics start out
Transformers
this way.
did that.
West Coast
They were a
Avengers.
mini-series. Yeah, well, did they start over with a new number one on that? I can't remember.
Oh, maybe they did. I think they
Nonetheless, there are some that go right into continue the numbering, and then there's others that just start over with a new number one, and then they continue for a while.
You're right about Transformers.
Robin.
G.I. Joe actually was a bit like that.
Yeah,
they weren't sure that was going to go. Oh my God, I think we just got the patient zero though of this practice with West Coast Avengers. It was a limited series, and they rebooted a brand new number one. And somewhere back in the 80s, they're like, "Holy shit, guys, we've got it."
No. I would blame Underground Comics and Robert Crumb for all this. 0 issues, new number ones. It's just Crumb on another fucking book. You know what I mean?
My goodness. Wraith-X7 says J. Jonah Jameson and Luke Cage being mayor of New York, Mars being terraformed, and Washington, D.C. being destroyed by Kang, and stories that have made the Marvel Universe no longer the window outside your universe or outside your world.
Truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
how many times has New York been just annihilated with black goo and then Sentinels just ripping buildings out?
This had Demon Moss killing people.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I'm talking about with it being too large scale. And look, whenever superheroes can fight, okay, if regular people that train really hard can fight superheroes, that can fight aliens, that can fight one level up from that can fight the fucking eternity. You've now made universal cosmic level threats barely a step above that guy that's standing on the corner. And it ceases being wonderful. It brings everything down.
It's not a problem. Barely inconvenience, Doc.
Man, I remember I was reading the first issue of Justice League from Scott Snyder, and he destroyed the moon in the first issue.
Yeah.
I said, where the fuck are you going to go from here? You know how many people would die if that happened? You would ruin a lot of stuff with that.
Wasn't that Dan Slott too?
Dan Slott didn't blow up the moon.
Yeah, he blew up the moon in that.
You're always going too big.
In that fucking in that thing with he was doing the negation war or whatever the shit it was.
Oh
that
yeah,
that's building. Right. He blew up the moon in the first
hole in the moon. That's right.
Oh yeah, because there was the Watcher.
There's still pieces of the moon floating around. Yeah,
there was pieces, but it was basically
he built up to that for a decade, Doc. Scott Snyder did it in issue 1.
Reckoning War, that was it.
Yeah.
See the difference?
Is that the one with Thundar the Barbarian and Ukla the Mock?
Yeah, that is. You got it. That's
I wish.
what it was.
I wish.
Now that's
Josh
a property
says,
they
smash
need to
the
do.
like button, nerds.
Yeah,
I heard if we get 250 likes, we get a Purge face reveal.
yeah,
Allegedly.
could happen. Yeah.
Last week we got a Doc face reveal, and he gave us some
Yeah.
half beard. You know what I mean?
Oh, nice.
You know what half beard is, Purge?
I don't. Nobody showed
Don't
his
wanna
ass.
know.
Yeah.
This
I don't
is
wanna know.
sexy.
I did a face reveal like 3 months ago, and everybody missed it.
Well,
It's
do it
true.
again now.
I was
Maybe if
interviewed
we
on
get
a comic
250, you'll
channel,
do
and they like, so you're Purge. I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing that.
I gave side beard.
Yeah.
Eric O'Sullivan, Marvel Comics needs Warren Ellis. Enough said.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
you
They
got to
could
groom
use
those
good
girls
writers.
somehow.
Yes.
Although
Prove
it's not
those
like
writers.
Warren Ellis has written anything really good in like 8 years, though.
He's written good apologies.
He's written a lot of those.
No, not that good. Nobody's accepting him.
I was reading his image stuff. It was like,
Very decompressed. Yeah. Hey Ellis, get back to Templesmith and finish that book out.
Fell.
That's right.
Go
Finish it
finish
out.
Fell.
Yeah.
Self-publish it. It'll
Finish
do.
me. Speaking
it'll
of which,
be
they should
fine.
get that Alyssa Wan book. And since there's some dangling plot threads, what they need to do is just wait 20 years and then get Jeff Thorne in to solve it.
Oh, that's
absolutely. Everyone would be like, wow, this is what I
Poor
was
Jeff
waiting
Thorne
for.
is 80.
Exactly.
And then
He's writing Iron Fist then.
and then he'll get that book canceled too.
Zach Richmond said, expecting new books and characters to take off right away is silly. You got to put in the work if you want the success. You can't just quit because nobody's buying right away.
Yeah.
Probably haven't gotten
But
into
but
it.
back in a day, Booster Gold was still, DC, they put out a book, it's going to go 2 years easy,
Yep.
Same thing with Marvel. Spider-Woman went 50 issues. I can't imagine that sales were that great, but they kept going on. Dazzler kept going on, and at least they had time to, if they were ever going to, be popular. And then sometimes they are introduced in other books also.
That's what the newsstand did for you. You could get long runs.
In fairness, you also didn't introduce, other than like Marvel started doing it in the early 90s with like Sleepwalker and Darkhawk, where they'd introduce a new character in their own title
Yeah, fuck
and
those
give
guys.
them and all of them failed.
Yeah. I mean, anthologies don't really do that well, but we need more anthologies to introduce these charters, I think.
Honestly,
Well, we're getting Marvel Pride. They're
You-
gonna
It's
leave
not quite the
30
same.
characters.
No, you introduce them in a random issue of Spider-Man or X-Men or the Avengers, and then if there's any demand for them, you bring them back. You have them show up another couple of times until you've built some demand
Yeah.
to justify them having their own series. That's how it's worked forever.
Yeah,
That's how it will work.
But I like what they're doing with Action Comics, which is now they've split it into like a collection of three
Really, you
short
like Leah
stories.
Williams' Power Girl?
No, I didn't say that.
You're
Stop.
the one.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
He's the
Come on,
one,
there's
sir.
some
No, that-
boob sweat in there. She talks about boob sweat. It's great.
Yeah, but I noticed
It's the real
everything
thing.
kind
You
of-
got to worry about. You got to contend with that sometimes.
No, but
That's
I like the
their
idea
problem.
of taking the book and then splitting it up basically into short, like serial chapters where you have the opportunity to introduce a character, but not take the chance in a full blown series, because you could always introduce that character for one of the chapters in say 3 successive
It's
issues.
a dream.
And if it doesn't hit, you just take it out and you haven't really lost that much. You're still getting value out of that book. I think that's a potentially good approach as long as they curate better writers with better characters. Leah Williams and Power Girl, that's DOA, but at least they're trying something that I think is smart. I'd like to see them do the same thing on Detective, where they, instead of having just another Batman book, make an anthology book, and then you can put other characters in there that are Batman centric or Batman related, and see if they catch on heat with a couple of serial chapters. I think that would be a smart approach.
You kind of
Gary
tried
from
that with
Dirty-
Future State. It didn't go. But this is a great super chat. Speaking of boob sweat.
You talking about Carrie's boob sweat?
No, I'm
Wow.
talking
Vertigo creates is the
I'm
Jeez.
not talking about Carrie. I'm talking
Carrie.
about
He's talking about your special parts.
I am not.
Jeez.
Yeah, demonetized.
He's
Should I
talking
turn
about
my
the real
camera off
world.
for this
real,
one?
Talking about writers trying too hard to incorporate real life issues.
Yes,
Well, the super chat is
Carrie.
regarding no longer.
It's
looks
funny
like the
that
world
like
outside your
real
window.
issues.
is Leah Williams' boob sweat. There
Yes,
is her.
thank you, Doc.
Yes,
You're the
I
voice of
caught it.
sanity
I
for
know
everyone.
exactly
Terminators
where you were going.
It's just Leah Williams and her friends
My-
trying to get nailed on a weekend. It's such a
God.
terrible comic book.
My
Finally,
God.
we can tell stories about our junk in comics. I love this.
Yeah,
Like
ball
the
sweat.
whole new
Yeah.
world has been opened, and it is right outside your window,
It
depending
has.
on where you live.
Yeah.
Definitely wherever Josh goes to hang out.
That's right.
I do want to apologize to Carrie for Purge talking about your boob sweat. That was
Hey, Wes, don't make it weird. This Carrie's wonderful.
Carrie is wonderful.
Come on, you don't ruin a just good, solid,
She's the manga
Leah
diva.
Williams joke.
a solid Leah Williams joke. You pissed all over it.
I watch Nerdy Girl Creates right before my show when I air, and I get all the manga talk I'll never talk about.
Bunch
All
of
in my ears.
bullshit
It's
here.
great.
Calvin says, Gabe, do you prefer Warren Ellis's Wildstorm comic over Matthew Rosenberg's?
I have yet to encounter anything from Rosenberg that I truly liked. So that should answer your question.
It's
Damn.
about 5 issues of Uncanny X-Men that were shockingly good.
Yes. 4.
But what if Grifter was pregnant?
That's not going to happen.
That's a question that we need answered.
Wildcats isn't that bad. I don't know why you guys hate it so much.
Yeah,
Because
because
it's not the
everybody
Wildcat.
wants Grifter running around with.
Look, it's never
members
gonna be
only
the
jacket
Wildcats
and high top
again.
kicks. Sure.
You know, Grifter, please. He's still wearing the same mask. It's just a little different. Come on.
32 flavors of Nick Weiser. Worst logic with relaunches, assuming everyone from the previous volume will carry over. Some do, but for the most part, it's a jumping off point.
Correct.
It's been proven correct.
Every single time.
But I've also had new readers as a result of that.
you
too.
you do,
Yeah,
but it
having them
never
stick
offsets.
around.
Well, see, that's the point. Like, are these new readers that are going to stick around with comics, or are they just kind of coming in? Are they speculators? You know, there's all. Number one still sell also.
Here's the deal with this. Your whatever your new normal is, you will get a bump, and your new normal will settle in and plateau less than your old normal. And
Right.
then as a result, and this is what the industry has been finding out, they have to start doing it more frequently and more frequently. That's why we've gone from ongoings that never end to 200 issues to 100 issues to 50 issues to 25 issues to 6 issues.
Well, and you're seeing that the longer runs, like the only way you can get an artist to stick on a book or a writer to stick on a book is if it's within that story arc that they have planned in their head.
Correct.
And if they only have something that's going to go 12 issues, it could be good, it could be bad, but I'm only doing 12 issues, you know, or 25 or 50, like you said.
But you will inevitably, you will have to do it more and more frequently. The end result, I mean, this is basic math here, is that you end up with an infinite number of number one issues. And that's all the shit that we've seen with, you know, Demon Days Psylocke, Demon Days Venom, every issue number one. That will be the par for the course for the entire industry. That is where it ends up.
The other math says if we continuously debate for 5 to 10 minutes for each one of these, we'll never get them done. Wraith X7, Marvel needs Jim Shooter to clean house. I wouldn't wish that on Jim Shooter. He's a nice man.
Jim,
He doesn't deserve that.
You need the 2023 version. Same personality. You gotta let him enjoy his retirement. What he's doing. Get
You think
somebody
he
new
wants
in.
to deal with Jordan White? Get out of here.
You see,
He brings a ukulele into work.
what
They
you
might not
need
even
is-
have offices anymore. I heard DC doesn't.
Hey, you know what? The
You're
one
still
thing
talking?
the one thing that we could see happen is somebody, the 2023 version of Jim Shooter, could come in, take Jordan White's ukulele, and then Jeff Jarrett him in the head.
I was just about to fucking say that.
Oh my goodness.
I was gonna say I'll
Did
come in and
anyone
Jeff
here
Jarrett
watch
his ass.
HQ Valentine Spect?
The Harley
The
Quinn.
Harley Quinn.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
No.
Is there a bit heavy spec on that? I got a variant.
Oh my goodness.
No.
I'll sell it for
Todd.
$10 like it cost.
Calvin says Darkhawk was 51 issues and has more than most modern Marvel Comics characters. Kyle Higgins' Darkhawk is an example of how to make new characters the right way and better representation than Marvel's Sunspider.
I've
First of
never
all,
read a Dark Clock in my life.
it
Sorry, I had to get that in there.
it had 50 issues. The legacy issue doesn't fucking count because it was 40. It was like 30 years later. So no, that does not count. It had 50 issues. And yes, but you know what? 50 issues for a launch title in for a new title in the 90s was terrible. Only getting 50 issues was bad. If you didn't hit 3
I
digits,
don't know about
your
that.
book was almost a failure.
Well, I
You were
agree with
dazzling.
you. I mean, in our minds back then, definitely.
Yeah.
This isn't going to last. It's only going to go 50 issues.
It's only a success by today's success metrics.
I've changed my point of view a bit on it, but like Purge said, that's what happens when you have a newsstand. You can get longer runs, and I hear you, definitely.
There you go. Let's see if we can get a second topic again. I think we're going to be able to get this one in. I have to take one that I think is good. Let's talk about this. Marvel and DC really aren't competing with manga. I'm sure, Perch, as a YouTube creator, you were sent this image kind of showing worldwide comic book sales, and Marvel and DC like outside the top 5. And if you combine their sales together, they still wouldn't have made the top 4 because the Asian comic publishers are absolutely dominating, whether it be Japan mostly, but also Korea as well. There's a lot of things that they can do here. This is what I've come to determine is the real problem why comics are where they are right now, Purge. Comics had an accessibility problem. They were no longer on the newsstand. In America, they're really only in the direct market. And they just weren't going to be out there worldwide for people to access unless they were digital. Japan, Asia, and Korea specifically identified that there was going to be an accessibility problem, made their comics accessible to everyone, and now they're thriving and making more money than anyone. DC and Marvel decided, well, we need a different audience, so we'll change the quality and the types of stories that we're writing to grow our audience, and then end up failing at constricting their audience, and they're still not accessible.
Yeah, I think you covered it actually really, really well. So, I mean, again, it's about momentum. So keep in mind, like what's going on with the manga publishers and a lot of this stuff has been going for a while now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, a lot of these pieces started getting put into place. Deals started getting signed, translations started coming out, things that the operational model got easier. But fundamentally, it's like this. No matter what's inside that comic, whether it's the wokest shit in the world or whether it's super based or whatever, if you have to go to a specialized store to get it, and that's the only place to get it, and your competition is in every Target, every Walmart, every dollar store, all the rest, and you're gonna lose. It becomes a volume play at that point. Yes, what's inside the cover matters from attracting people and getting them to read it. I'm not saying that the manga stuff's all just shit and it's just the distribution, but look, manga is everywhere. And so the volume of this stuff, there's just no way. It's David and Goliath at the moment. Until comics can get into other places, and what Wes said about digital is also correct. Manga basically looked at it from a business standpoint, very smart, and said, we want to make cheap translation. We want to make quick to market. We want to have a digital strategy, and we want to have a mass market strategy. We got to do all 4 at once. And they did. And I was working fairly closely with Shueisha once upon a time when they were at the beginning of this. And there were conversations that said, if we do one of these, we fail. We have to do all of them. And it's hard to do all of them, but we have to do all of them. That's how we win. That's how we grow our business. And so, fast forward to today, the momentum that manga has is going to go for another 10 years. Look, so put it like this. If Marvel now starts to do the same thing, starts to have a good digital strategy, starts to put stuff in Walmart or Target, and they've got a long time before they even get to the momentum of where manga is right now. Mm-hmm. It's a tough thing to survive, and they lost a generation. Kids are going for manga. This is now going to carry for 12 years. That's another big, huge challenge. So all these things, it's like Marvel's tying weights to itself and trying to run a marathon.
You know what I do in the store, Perch? Mm-hmm. I have been saying that these are key series that I am interested in, and I want you to be interested in it too. And if you buy it monthly, and if you read it, and if we talk about it, and I pull it for you, and you're caught up by the end of that storyline, I'm going to give you some money back.
Yeah.
But I think I'm working super hard for Marvel and DC in doing that when I really shouldn't have to. They should be the ones offering something like that, some incentive. Agreed. Sometimes DC will have returnability, but Marvel never does.
That's
And that's the only way I could think to, like, how am I going to get people into? And it's not like younger people, reading it.
It's true, and people in the chat are going where they often go of like, well, but if the stuff inside the covers is crap, it's never going to work. I understand for people coming back to the book, but there is a fundamental problem of if you can't find it, you have no idea what's in the cover, good or bad.
Yeah.
And right now with manga, I go to the dollar store and there's manga there.
No. I agree with everything you said. The problem that Marvel and DC and Image have is instead of doing 4 things, they have to do 5. Sorry. They have to improve their product.
Right. Yeah.
Because
look, you're right. This is solving the problem of just getting the volume out there.
Yes.
Once it's out there, you have to keep the readers.
Yes.
And keeping the readers means you got to get them excited. And that's where manga has been pretty brutal about. If you go to Barnes & Noble, by the way, you're going to see 500 series. I've got news for you. They're not all amazing. There's some shit in there. But the stuff that gets promoted and gets the second volume, the third volume, the stuff that they spend the money on to translate, they cast a really wide net. They see what goes, and they keep translating, keep moving books over of the stuff that reaches a certain threshold. So they're doing that selection.
Yes. And yes, you were 100% correct. They Marvel and DC, they just have a bigger hurdle to climb than even manga did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever they started their path going forward to this. And yeah, you're probably going, and it's the same thing I've been saying. You can't solve it with any one thing. You have to do 5 things at once, 6 things at once.
Yeah.
And it will require, like, they need their editorial lead, their EIC, president, publisher, whatever each of their companies head guy is, needs to understand and needs to be able to go to their parent company and say, look, everybody that's been running this company for a long time has driven this company into the ground. Do you want to fix it? Okay, we will be a loss leader for the next 5 years. You are going to have to invest far more money than we could possibly pull out for the next 5 to 10 years. But after that, we will start to catch up. We will start to build something.
I honestly don't believe I don't believe it's as much of a loss leader as we think, because keep in mind, Marvel's not playing as a brand new company. They're playing as a 60-year company with massive amounts of IP, and they're putting out 80 books a month. They're generating huge amounts of content. If you look at their library, and even if everybody on this panel is being honest, we already have. Everybody here at one time or another has said something that Marvel has produced in the last 6 months that you enjoyed.
I have not.
Okay, well,
you have.
Here's the shit about you.
Oh, wait, I said Sins of Sinister was okay.
Yeah, there you go. But there's stuff out there. Nobody's saying take 80 books and shove them out into Walmart. And frankly, you're not just talking about 80 books in January. You have an audience that it's never seen John Byrne's She-Hulk or Chris Claremont's X-Men or a lot of these books. You have a back catalog, and that is exactly what manga did. The manga that you're seeing to gain this momentum was not the this month manga.
Oh yeah,
the series have been out for a while. So and it would not cost. It's just, they don't have to spend more money. They own this. Create it in a volume, get it into Walmart, put it out that way. You've got 60 years worth of content to get people excited.
You are 100% correct on that.
Yeah, what Purge is referencing is what I was going to talk to. And he mentioned Barnes & Noble earlier. You can go in there and you see a massive amount of manga. I was in Target a week ago, and in their book section, they had an entire aisle, both sides, an entire aisle that was nothing but manga. Yep. And the book aisle was only like 4 aisles. So just perspective there, like, it's crazy. But I think also with Gunn announcing these books and seeing that they're selling out, on Amazon and everywhere else, that's a sign that if I'm DC Comics, I'm going to actually get my shit together when I know I've got a movie coming out. If this Superman legacy is based off, Superman.
Here's the problem, Josh. I got to interrupt you on this one. You're trying to compete with collectors and speculators at that point. That's where manga has really been smart. They said, yes, collectors are a part of the reading audience, but there's an infinitely larger, like, normie reading audience available rather than people that just want to collect and speculate. based on the content that's going to be in a movie or
I'm
whatnot.
I'm not talking about no. My point is that these books sold out based on normies hearing that these movies are about these books. So
No,
if
these were collectors going in there saying, I gotta have a copy so I can flip it on
Wes.
eBay.
I'm trying to finish a statement, dude. Let me finish a statement. So my point is, Wes or Purge talked about building excitement. So if you want to build excitement, get shit that we know is good quality, put it out there on the shelves. But if you can plan well enough to get enough printed that you can actually fill Walmarts, fill Targets, not just these local comic shops, that's going to help start creating excitement. That is one step. That should be the first step. And that's a very easy step that these people aren't capable of doing because they can't run a business. That's my point. Carry on.
Well, this is my point, Josh. They correctly identified that there was an accessibility issue with Marvel and DC Comics about a decade ago. They didn't pinpoint what the accessibility issue was. They said the content wasn't correct to be able to expand their audience. So they changed the content, made it worse. So now we're 10 years into the future. The comics still aren't accessible. There's really no digital platform out there to where you can get all these comic books that is cheap and affordable and really easy to get a hold of. And now there's an enormous quality issue that they have to overcome. And they've been relying on collectors now for what, like 5 years, and it's becoming more and more reliant
25,
on that.
25, actually.
With all the variant covers and everything that they're doing, having to do more and more just to get any sales whatsoever. When manga has proven that just normie readers, there are far more of them than actual collectors that are diehard that have to have complete runs or are going to go out there and spend $100 on a 1 in 100 variant cover out there. And they've replaced their accessibility with an enormous quality and accessibility problem.
Well,
That's why I'm saying get your back issues that are collected of the stories that were translated, whatever, it collected into like a hardcover or soft cover, depending on the price point. Put it in a place that's accessible for normies. Like that's what I'm saying, dude. I understand what the problem is. I'm saying, how do you fix it? You've got to take steps like this to fix it. If you don't make something accessible for a normie audience, that's something that people are going to actually enjoy, you're never going to have a first step to fixing that problem.
So one thing that you said was, both of you actually, that feature point, and this is something you don't hear talked about a lot, is one thing that Shueisha and Manga did, but particularly Shueisha, and there you could see their statements of all the things that they said they had to do, pursue digital mass distribution, all this other stuff. One thing they absolutely ignored was the collector. And when I say ignored, they did not, very strictly in their business model, did not go for variants and a lot of the other cons. And they believed to completely ignore that audience, they would avoid the trap that other companies went into. And they went full mass market. The belief was, and they inside the company, they said, anyone who's a collector, who's that kind of fan, that person, we're going to pivot to a licensing business. We're going to sell models and toys, and we're going to shove it all over there. We're going to leave the comics alone. And I think that was very, very smart.
Not only that, but the collectors, they actually don't give a shit about variants. If there's only one copy, if there's only one version of a book, they will still collect that. They don't need an ultra rare version to collect just to be better. They're just happy to have all of them. So
can you imagine this game if 10 years ago Major League Baseball said, you know what, we're losing popularity, or 20 years ago in the sport, we need to pivot and put all of our focus into making really cool baseball cards that are really collectible and forget about expanding, distribution of the product and getting new deals to where the, baseball is more accessible worldwide now than ever before. Can you imagine, like, when they went into like the most niche part of their readers or their viewership for the sport period?
Yeah, Marvel leaned into niche.
Your business.
Marvel leaned into niche for sure.
Yeah, so there in the magazine publishing business, and I'm talking about like in like newsstand magazine there's a phrase called point of passion, and that phrase refers to the point where somebody flips from becoming a normie to somebody who's a true fan of a property, whatever that property is. Sports is an easier example to picture this. So you have somebody that will casually watch a baseball game. You brought up sports. Somebody will casually watch a baseball game or a football game, whatever. And that's like, oh, okay, I'm watching the game. That's fine. Then you have the fan, and the fan will buy jerseys. They'll have plaques on the walls. They'll have footballs that's got the team logo on it, or the baseballs that have the signatures on it. That's
One of
the
my children
audience-
is named after a baseball player.
Right, but what happens is, but that's where the separation occurs. The game didn't change, but what they did is they recognized that all the collectors and the speculators and the true fans, they will buy anything and everything that has anything to do with that team. So if they, to Purge's point about pushing all of that into the merchandising and the licensing and everything else, that and say, if you're a speculator or you're super into this property, we've got all this stuff you're going to love. But the core
100%,
product is going to
100%.
remain the same.
Yes.
That's exactly what you want. That's what you want.
You're right. Keep it where it belongs. And
But-
and the crazy part is, and one of the reasons why Marvel and Disney have had friction is Disney's model operates exactly like how you described. Very distinct movie business, very distinct licensing and merchandising business. Marvel kept it all in one for, quite frankly, what appears to be control issues. That was crazy. It hurt their business. And honestly, Disney doesn't know how to deal with the company in that regard. It's why you've seen such stupid stuff. And it's also why you've seen the movies largely do all the merchandising completely off the studio business and leave the comics alone because they just can't touch it and they won't bother.
Well, here to Wes's example, here's the thing: baseball didn't, but all the baseball card companies did. They did the exact thing that you're talking about. And that's why you don't see kids giving a shit about baseball cards.
No, yeah, they made them so expensive to actually just buy a pack. It was no longer something that you could just buy on the corner stand.
And
But baseball
now-
survived because it was separated.
Yes, it separated itself. But like Topps is basically, those are basically dead brands. They have no future because they went wholeheartedly. If there's 1,000 players in the league or whatever it is, that would have been the old set plus 20 chase cards. There's now 2,000 chase cards in a baseball, like a sporting card set, and like half of the players don't even have cards. That's where the baseball card industry went. I've seen it on fucking TikTok scrolling.
I don't
through.
know, man. Some of those back issue ones though are expensive.
But let's take the
All you need is
example back
people
to
getting
comics
hot.
and how you could do it differently. So when they're doing a comic, they're commissioning, say, 10 different variant covers. Instead of running up all these schemes, what you could say is, here's the comic, but if you like this variant cover because you say you're in love with Derek Chu, and I'd love that, make that available as a poster print. Make that available as a plaque or something you can put it on the wall, or just give them the ability to purchase it separately in any number of different formats. You still collect it.
Or
the publisher is still making
You
money
can
off
order
it.
it right from the company, but the
Yeah.
only way you're going to know what books you can get is if you buy the comic book and then take it home and look at the different covers. That
Have
are
an
available.
insert in the comic
The
book where it's
comic
like an
store
art
won't care
catalog.
that- the
Well,
comic store won't care that you bought double of that
Yeah.
over there, as long as they've got more people buying that thing in the beginning.
or
For sure.
get
I
into
don't know.
the
sure.
art, like the coffee table book.
Oh,
Yeah,
with
I mean,
art-
anything to just not have to purchase those in the store is really
Every-
art
going
with
down the-
calendars. You can do calendars.
all of
No,
it.
every-
Notebooks with
every
all
year.
kinds of things.
Get this
Every
stuff to
shirt.
where it belongs. There's companies that are good at this. They're not comic book companies. Let the companies that are good at all this merchandise deal with it. And again, that's back to manga and Marvel and DC. Shueisha famously partnered up with Square Enix for a lot of the models and stuff that they were doing with the toys and just all these different other companies that were really good at that business, knew how to market it, knew how to make it, knew how to produce it. And they did, and they made money. Meanwhile, the baffling thing is you got Marvel over here tied to Disney, who from a Western perspective is probably one of the most, a juggernaut of producing merchandise and licensing. They don't leverage them at all. So yeah, some people should probably get fired.
Perch,
A
what do you
lot
think
of
the first thing that they should do? I think they have to get off like being tied to Comixology. They need to get rid of their two dueling like digital platforms and do something together
They need to,
that is
yeah,
accessible and
they need
cheap.
to, whether they buddy up with DC or not, they need to go to Shueisha and they need to license that platform, which Shueisha offers, by the way. Other Korean companies are using it, and just say, there you go, there's our digital strategy. It's going to be here. But the thing I would do first is not that. The thing I would do first is go back, figure out the 50 or so, Tonkabon level runs of a comic, produce them, go out to Walmart and Target and say, we're going to give you a book every 2 weeks. that is from our gigantic ass catalog. And the ones that sell in the first quarter, we're going to make a volume 2 of it. The ones that don't, we're going to retire and to print it on newsprint, get it for $6.99, $7.99. So it's priced the same as the manga. Tie into what Josh was seeing on the shelf. You could make it the same size so it could just fit right on there. You have to do no work. And just start shoving that shit out there and start to get some brand recognition, some readership up. So when somebody
they
goes
also need to figure out what's the story of Batman.
Sure.
But, you know what I mean? And figure out how you go from beginning to end.
So this is where I think comic people, all of us have read comics, continuity crisis, all these different things. Forget about everything we know for a minute and just understand that the newbie that's coming in has none of this knowledge. You can tell them whatever you want. You can print the 6 stories in that tankobon that's the origin that you think's the one that's the most mass produced. And no, this is not the opportunity to do all of John Ridley's stuff. I mean, actual Batman comics for the last 50 years that sell, and just put it whatever order you want. And if some comic person comes in and goes, well, technically in continuity, this issue came before this issue, nobody gives a shit in a Target for that. Just put it out. It's easy.
Yeah, and you could name him. You could say this is the Golden Age Batman run. This is his story, because he does reset after every crisis.
Yeah, and by the way, everything that we're talking about helps the direct market. That's the crazy part.
Yep.
That comics in Walmart and Target, getting that stuff out there, people read it and they're like, wow, I'd like to get the high quality. I'd like to get the original for that, for the collectors. Great. They go to the comic shop to buy the back issues. I want the floppy version. Great. You go to the comic book shop, you buy the new issues.
I want a bigger version so I could see the art better.
Yeah, all this stuff helps. And we know it works that way because manga has been doing it for the last 10 years.
Like price it properly. They never do.
No, they go out there and they're like, well, this is going to be $20. And then we're going to
$25 epics.
Yeah, and
$50 epic books.
And you inflict it with stuff that normies don't understand. Look, Todd McFarlane's a god to me. If you're going to Target, would you call it the Todd McFarlane Epic Collection of Spider-Man? No, you call it Spider-Man with a 1 on it. And then when you printed the next version, it would have a 2 on it and a 3. That's it. Just like that.
Just like that.
So Purge, for the face watch, we've got 200 likes, so we haven't hit the 250 for the face reveal that you might do.
I'm not going to do a face reveal.
Well, sorry, people. Josh sold you
that like away.
Josh is selling you a,
Josh, Dylan wants to know, Wes, Josh, I need you to hug this out before the stream's over.
I think we're good. I don't think I can get feisty. I've been quiet pretty much this whole stream, and I'm trying to get one point out. Like, let me get it out, and then you can make your point. But
damn.
I don't carry resentment. So
it sound like you were resentful right there, Josh.
I mean,
honest,
like,
that was hurtful.
Just don't get twitchy if I do a little butt grab when we hug it out.
Listen, dude, if you don't grab
it, I wouldn't Josh at all. Just let you know. But we wouldn't hate each other like you guys.
We don't hate each other. We're both passionate about comic books.
Complain about his thumbnails, Josh.
I don't know. I said I like staring at that mug earlier. So
no one hates my thumbnails more than I do. That's not a point of contention.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, Perch, that we've had this information for so long. They misidentified the problem so badly that they've confounded everything to where it's like, can they even catch up? If they could, it would take like another decade at least just to try and do it.
Yeah, they've lost a generation. So it's usually 12 to 15 years they've lost at this point. And it's going to be harder to get them back because as Disney's seeing, and Disney, the theme parks, they believe they've started to lose a generation. The most powerful marketing for a product is when the parents are like, hey, this is really good, and they push it on the kids. Well, we lost a generation here where they're becoming adults. The current teens that should have been hooked by this stuff are not going to be giving these comics to their kids. So now you have to work extra hard to get to the kids and groom them properly, which Disney is working on.
Oh, you can't use that word.
I'm kidding. But that's the problem. That's why momentum matters. And it is really screwed up and it's sad to see. But the crazy part about this manga situation is, unlike a lot of other businesses, manga, Shueisha in particular, showed their math completely. Yeah. Completely the entire time. Like this, as you say, it was right there. Everybody could see what was happening. Everybody could see their moves. They were publishing what they were doing with their digital platform. There was a blog there where they were talking about how they were growing it. It was like they're just handing over their business secrets, and everybody's like, "Oh, fuck that! I'm busy worrying about Civil War II. I don't need to pay attention." Crazy, absolutely crazy.
So what do you want to see in the next 5 years? What is DC? I know you're a DC guy, Josh. What do you think they have to do? What can they not miss in the next 5 years just to try to get back in the game?
I mean, if we're going to talk about like the audience that we have with your floppy comics, like what we discussed in the whole first half of the show, they've got to start doing. Like they've got to cut their line. They've got to get better talent in, and they've got to actually run their business like a business. And part of that is capital, and that's why I mentioned reprint these stories that are considered quality stories. Get a general audience excited again, even if they're just buying these trades. That's capital for DC or Marvel to come and take and actually put into their books. So, where we got these stories of people not getting paid, hey, maybe you can actually pay your talent. Maybe you can pay top tier talent what they want to make so you can get more of these like evergreen books out there. But I think you've got to get general excitement, and that's not there. It's fading. And you had it to a degree with the MCU going all the way up until Infinity War, but Marvel couldn't get their shit together to coincide with that on a publishing aspect, whether it was their floppies or releasing their trades. But I think if you find a way to get excitement going with the general audience, you're gonna see some transition into the mainstream floppy.
Well, DC obviously does have some excitement right now. People did go out and they sold out of all the collections that they had, but those movies aren't going to come out for another 3 or 4 years.
Oh, great.
Yeah, no, it's going to be hard to bridge that. The excitement now is not going to carry over. I mean, but when you made a great point, when Disney was trying to really gain momentum with the MCU and what Feige was doing, what was Marvel doing? Well, quite frankly, they were being butthurt that they weren't invited into the writer's room, and Bendis was throwing a tantrum that they weren't utilizing his skills. And Ike Perlmutter is trying to get Kevin Feige fired to the point that he had to move the entire movie division actually under studios. That's what Marvel was doing. Bizarre.
Yeah, so it's not a competition though. I'm tired of hearing that. Did you see that gaslighting we got a few weeks ago, Purge, with Heidi McDonald saying like adult graphic novels are better than ever? It's like whoever said manga wasn't selling. It's plain as day what is actually happening here.
The only sad part is like we all keep fighting it. There is, as you say, there's no fight. Like the second for me, and it's been this way for a long time. And I showed you this image, and I remember it was on this show, and it would have to be at least 2 years ago. And it was like the true comic industry, and like top publishers had all the Shueisha and all these, and then niche publishers, indies, is Marvel and DC now. It's been that way for a while. And look, if you go into the dollar store and you see manga, you know it's over. Not that anybody should go in the dollar store. It's a hellhole. But anyway.
I wish we had a dollar store here. It'd be nice. Let's hear what the people are saying. Ideator says manga's draw is escapism. Western comics have chosen a team, politics, and culture not to offend anyone. Entertain and you'll sell your product. That's absolutely where there's
definitely a lack of oomph on almost everything.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of tell, oh, this is where this type of person is, or this is where this kind of story is. And, this is the part where I don't have to read this at all.
Yeah.
Common Sense says Image Comics and other indie publishers need to use the manga strategy on their trades and original IP to make people excited to do the other genres.
You can't control what the creators at Image want to do with their books, even if they want to put a die-cut cover.
True.
Boom, and
that's all there is to it.
Image are really, really hot right now compared to what they were 5 years ago, Purge.
Yeah, and well, that's true, but that's a good thing, by the way. This problem, I mean, look, Image's whole model is you could do what you want. That's fine. Let people do what they want.
Gold leaf pages,
yeah.
Please.
I mean, that union at least worked out, so everything was fixed there.
Yeah, Image is better.
Haven't heard anything about that now.
Yeah.
Apple Pits, can we start a campaign to get Alex Ross to run DC?
Oh man, you'd have to hold a gun to his head to make him do that.
But he would be one of the people that would be qualified.
Starting with the golden age.
Ross, to run DC? I mean, to be the creative head of DC, I'm with.
I mean, creative.
Yeah.
Not business wise.
Sure.
I'm talking about somebody that knows the characters, appreciates the characters.
That'd be great.
Can work with people.
That
might be the reason Mark Waid doesn't work.
We could stop wasting his talent on Black Panther covers.
Ooh, man. That
they're
Fantastic
nice covers,
Four book he did was amazing.
He does the FF ones also, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a waste.
Yeah.
Great work.
Common Sense says, Perch, did your daughter know that Marvel already has done anime from 2010 to 2018 Limited
I
series
tried.
movies.
Yeah, I tried. I gave them some of that. It didn't stick. The Marvel
I tried
anime
too.
never felt like actual manga.
I tried to watch the anime Wolverine with my son, and he did not like it.
No, it's not. It's just I don't know what it is, and maybe I could get her to sit down and explain. But she's like, yeah, that's not real anime. I don't know what she meant by that, but she sniffed it out.
Yeah. Sigma Comics, HH in the house. Shout out to Wes, the top comic book experts from the amazing Savannah, dropping it hot on Kickstarter on Tuesday. Lots of news to share.
Yeah, I need to.
Speaking of manga, HH has a manga coming out from Sigma Comics.
Sigma HH, somebody I definitely need to get back to. He emailed me like 2 months ago, like everybody else.
I have troubles responding to my emails too, Purge. It's not.
Well, I never like it when like a top creator decides to throw me on an email and dox me to 40 other creators. That's always nice.
I know who you're talking about.
I know you do.
Oh, very interesting stuff.
You know exactly
Doc,
what I'm talking about.
What?
Like the button smash. Yeah, even if we hit 250, Purge has said he's not giving anyone side.
So go to 249 then and let us know that we could have got to 250.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hit that like button like Hank Pym hits his wife.
Perch just thunderbolted the stream, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Random McRanderson.
Nice.
You can make all the trade paperbacks you want, but if you don't fire all the editors and stop trying to recreate past the manual to new characters, it won't work.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, Huxpox was the thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, play it out this way. Let's say you keep all the editors, and bear in mind, I'm not advocating to that because I do think there needs to be a lot of staff turnover. So remember that. That's a disclaimer to what I'm about to say. One of the ways that a lot of these people could keep doing their jobs and make more money, frankly, and all the rest is if they did, swallow whatever pride or just hand the business over to somebody else. You get all these trade paperbacks from the last 40 years. You put them into Walmart, Target, your revenue would go up a lot. Purely by the new distribution you have, but you also get people into it. Now,
But not the trades for the last 10 years. They've all been awful.
You could do a few. I mean, there's some.
House of X, Powers of 10. You got Gore the God Butcher. And then I'm drawing a blank on what else people would actually want to read.
Even like right now, this Alan Moore Levette's series would be a great trade. You put that out, that would sell. It's classic. It's good. It would work. The stuff that Peter David did with the Hulk would work. Some of Donny Cates stuff would work. There's stuff out there. Again,
the Venom stuff probably would do pretty well. That's a really good story.
Yeah, the Absolute Carnage stuff. I mean, like, look, the thing to remember is they're publishing more than 80 books a month. There's one or two books out there that's not bad. You take those one or two books over the course of a year, you've got a trade. There's stuff out there.
Yeah, they did do Vader Down. Is that the best Marvel story they've done in the last 10 years?
No.
I think it is. This thing is great. You don't love Vader Down?
What I don't get, though, is this strategy here. If I was lazy, and I am plenty lazy, this is the way to do it. You put this stuff out there, you get the money coming in, you get to do less. Like your job gets boring and easy. That's the part that cracks me up. You make money doing nothing.
I want my job to be boring and easy.
That's how you want it.
Dallas Moderman. As a casual, I love to read Spider-Man. The Epic collection seems perfect, but there's always volumes out of print, sometimes years. My coworker wants to read 70s Conan, but it's out of print.
Which is fucking stupid. So sorry, it's so stupid. And this is the other. They're giving away money. This is an unforced error, and more than half the time, I won't say who, but there's I shouldn't say who. A guest on this show. I don't know if he wants me mentioning it, but this drives him out of his mind. And when he goes and talks to Marvel and people over there, they off more times than not, it's out of print. We didn't know. It's like, what are you doing?
How the fuck do you not know what your own company has in print at any given time?
There's always a reason. Always a reason. It's like, well, our guys are overworked. We had to we let some people go, and we have too much. I totally understand, but this is free money. Free money.
Yep.
Big dumbass.
Incompetence also. Look, when you're cutting staff because you need to save money, you end up often cutting expensive staff. And while there is some expensive staff that tends to be overpaid for what they produce, and they've kind of slacked off as they've gotten to certain levels, you're also eliminating a lot of competence.
Sure.
And you end up with a lot of cheap incompetence. And cheap incompetence is worthless.
Terrence Bernard, they need a severe restructuring, rebrand, and ad campaign. They need more transparency for training and hiring and an oversight committee to ensure quality. They definitely need a restructuring. Do you think even if they changed CB Cebulski, it would help? I don't think it would.
You need a different group of people, and you need to put some incentives for that change. So you need to bring some other people in. You need to have a business model for your staff that actually rewards success and some of these things, and doesn't reward the status quo. The problem is whether the person's good or bad. A lot of people in that staff they rely too much on passion. You talk to people at Marvel, people who have left, and there's this idea in their head of like, well, a lot of people just care about comics. Because they care about comics, they'll just do the right thing. And because they do the right thing, we won't have to worry about bonus programs or royalty programs or stronger reviews for people. I mean, like they bypass all that for the full-time staff. And so what's their incentive to get better? Now, good people will get better, but frankly, good, smart people will go elsewhere where they can actually make more money and have a more stable career. So I
think that's where we're at, Purge, where the people that are left are the people that didn't have opportunities.
Yeah, when they went through some of the restructuring and the layoffs, 10 years ago or maybe less than that, what happens oftentimes in companies is you do eliminate some of the weak performers, but all the really strong performers immediately go, this company may not be stable. I will go look for a job. And all your good people who are motivated go. And so you're left with the middle. And the middle, not incentivized, quickly becomes the bottom.
Yeah. Carrie from Nerdy Girl creates manga also separates their genres. They don't pour slice of life into their superhero stories.
Yeah, I do a good job with that.
Yeah,
that's the biggest. That's the problem with Marvel and DC. It is the world outside your window, but it's like the mundane part of it that I don't ever want to see in a comic book. Everybody made fun of Didio for saying Batman doesn't sit down, but I think under normal circumstances, you can understand when he would sit down in the comic book, but it makes perfect sense. That does, at least to me.
That was a good state. People took that wrong and stupid. Of course, there's pictures of Batman driving the car around all the time. People took Didio to this weird extreme that was dumb. That was a good point.
Batman,
you do not need to see Batman ordering takeout. It's not meant to be funny, and it's not meant to be an entire issue. And I'm trying to figure out how I can get a Leah Williams joke into Carrie's comment here, but I can't do it.
There's the whole thing is, even when Batman sits down, he's not sitting down. He's doing something. There's a sense of emotion that comes with him sitting that is completely different than my fat ass sitting in this fucking chair talking into a microphone right now. It's if he's sitting down in a chair, it's because he's exhausted and he's like collapsed into the chair out of pure exhaustion. If he's driving a car, he has intensity to him. You don't see him just kind of going to the grocery store. He's not making mundane trips.
Yeah, Batman, like he'd sit in the cave and Alfred would bring him tea and he'd ponder who's murdering people in an alley somewhere. And of course he sits down. Of course he does. It's not, but the point is he has an adventure he's trying to get to. The comic is not all about Alfred making tea. The comic is about Batman's trying to solve a murder. And at one point it makes sense for him to talk to his butler because it factors into the story. But at some point writers got in their head that, hey, it'd be really wacky and funny if we spend an entire issue talking about how Alfred goes to the supermarket to get the food that he feeds Batman with. That'd be really hilarious. Let's do that. It's like, that's funny when you're having drinks with a bunch of your
Stop giving Rosenberg ideas for his next short.
Can you cut the crust off these sandwiches, off the bread?
Yeah. That's a valid example, but that's an example of where if you were doing like a kid's book, a children's book, like a Batman Adventures kind of thing, where maybe you could spin something out of that. But the idea there's a separation between the reading audiences. There's segmentation. Yep. You're directing the book at the right audience. Batman is an action-based detective comic. You wouldn't put like hardcore horror into a Batman comic. But you wouldn't do that as a regular staple. So just the reverse is opposite. If you have Batman sitting down and eating meals with Alfred for 5 pages, that's not going to work. And that's part of the issue is instead of saying let's spin off different characters and focus on different subsections of our reading audience and give them books that appeal to them directly, let's just take the existing property and try and spin it and morph it in different directions to appeal to a broader audience. That never works. You can't take one product and make it into a different product and expect to have audience retention that expands. That never works. Manga is much better about that because you have books that are focused on tennis, books that are focused on chess, superhero books, books that are focused on little kids that are like, Pokemon type stuff, but then books that go like Junji Ito, books that are more like mature horror. But they know that, I hate to say it this way, they know their lane and they stay in their lane. And that's why they're successful, because the people who like that lane stick with that lane. And they get more of them.
You're absolutely right. Hey, let me get a shout real quick. Joe Casey, I know you're watching right now. So, hey, good to, we talked about you earlier. Awesome creator. I hope you saw that short that he did in the image anthology. He's got always a really cool guy. But hey, from all of us.
The thing I was going to point out here, though, is that whenever you do have that, like, okay, well, Alfred's going to go to the supermarket to get that's a perfectly fine jumping off point for an adventure story. And that's yes, in one page. You saw it. Okay, the Hellfire Gala. I hate to keep coming back to this, but they did that in a couple of pages of the beginning of Uncanny 280. So that they could introduce Sentinels ripping the fucking roof off and killing the Hellions. That's where it jumped into it. There was a jumping off point in it.
Different Joe Corallo, I know his guest on the show. He and I have done these bad comic pitches before. They're meant to be jokes. They're not meant to be story kick ideas for people. And that is the world of the mundane. In many cases, for many, many years, you go have drinks with writers, editors, and people get a little drunk and they start talking about something funny. Like, wouldn't it be funny if, there was a Silver Surfer was in a surfing competition? Everybody's like, it's funny. But then, you'd sober up and the editor would be like, yeah, but we're not going to do that because that would be stupid. And at some point that pivoted to, let's greenlight it. 5 issues. Let's try it.
Make it work. Steakball wants to know, how is there no Wizarding World comic under DC? If I'm J.K. Rowling, I would never let DC touch any of my characters.
Nope.
I have, you want to get people in the comic store? Get an adaptation of Harry Potter. That would get people in the frickin' comic store. It would blow manga away.
You did the continuing, yeah, for sure. You did the continuing adventures of that world in a comic book form. And
I was just saying, straight lifts of the book to start.
Yeah, as a graphic novel.
Go for it.
Yeah, you do it well for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean,
you have so many Harry Potter fans; they would have to come in just to have their complete collection, right?
Oh my god,
that's a beginning point.
I mean, this is back when like the last few books were coming out. I thought this was like had to happen. Like, why? How could this not have happened yet? They were coming out with like some of the George R. R. Martin books. This is before like Game of Thrones and stuff. And I'm like, we've got to get this Harry Potter thing in here. And I mean, we were selling the books in a comic book store. I mean, what's going on here? Well, just a shame that we haven't had that.
The first problem off the top of my head is, who would you get to write it?
I'm not worried about that right now. All I'm worried about
Jody
is
Hauser can take a book and adapt it to a comic book just fine.
April Fools. Someone's got to put out
her Doctor Who adaptations are not the best. So.
You put Leah Williams on it. You do an entire comic about Hermione going through puberty. So,
and moving on.
Well, actually, does J.K. even have the rights? I mean, she might still have the rights. That's
that's what I'm saying.
In which
really court her. I mean,
she could do the book herself.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. I mean,
she's a billionaire.
All I need to do is be able to order it. That's the only thing I care about.
Exploding Pretty says DC showcase collections were a godsend when I gained interest in Jonah Hex and Amethyst. Never bothered me that they were in black and white.
Yeah.
Case was so good.
I love those black and white magazine formats of Conan, and then they did the Destroyer series with Remo Williams. I love those books.
They're good books.
Doc loves black and white too. So
actually, they're not. Honestly, like the showcase series, the Marvel Masterworks, they're really not bad. But you can't do them for any of the modern books because, well, they don't have any fucking inking.
All right. Well, Tommy Reviews says to Dallas' super chat, Marvel doesn't own Conan, but they did own them for like the last 5 years, and it's
Titan's going to be Titan's got it now. Going to be reprinting those things. So there you go. Omnis.
Federico De La Casa, after Wes's last video, I feel like we are Cassandra and Troy. We foresaw everything, but nobody believed us. We needed Jim Shooter's second coming. Jim Shooter's retired. Just let the man be.
Well,
Let the man enjoy his.
Tell
here's
stories
wouldn't-
and have a good life.
I'm gonna
Bring me in.
if you were going to tap some help, I'm going to bring up an option that I guarantee you nobody has ever talked about or thought about for DC at least. For DC, what most people don't know is that Warner Brothers DC is now part of Discovery, but Discovery Properties, which is the broader company, the majority stakeholder for Discovery Properties is a company called Advance Publications. Advance, which used to be known as Condé Nast Publications. That is the largest magazine and newspaper publisher, second, at least one or two in the country, if not the world. A $4 billion company. They own the newsstand. They know distribution inside and out. They have data scientists on their staff that do nothing all day but look up subscriptions, who buys what, how do we appeal to the audience, how do we get these in the hand of the most number of people possible. That company is a controlling shareholder of Discovery, which by extension now owns DC. If I was DC, the first thing I would do is I'd pick up a phone from somebody in advance and say, hey, if we do well, you do well because you are a majority stakeholder. Give us your editorial insight, give us some help, and help us get our operations in shipshape condition, and then see where that goes. If somebody would do that, be smart enough to do that, that would be a great idea.
That is a great idea. Absolutely. Run it like a business, run it non-emotional. Hey, folks.
And they could leverage the contracts for distribution and newsstand and everything else too, potentially.
Purge needs to jump out of here.
I do. I apologize. I misjudged a little bit, and people in the chat will understand. My daughter's got some horseback riding lessons here in Old Texas, so all y'all I gotta do what's right by her. But
that's awesome.
But thank you for having me on. It was great to talk to all of you, and I know we had some people watching. Had some interesting people watching the chat.
Thank you very much. And Perch, do you have any comic recommendations? Was there anything good this week?
Yeah, I again, that Avengers book, the
Avengers War Across Time.
That's right, issue 2. Really, really solid. Did like the Namor Conquered Shores, Christopher Cantwell. I did enjoy that book quite a bit, actually. And those are kind of the two heights. I think the Batman Joker, the Deadly Duo, continues to be a fun book. I'm enjoying that. I mean, I like Mike Silvestri always, but those are pretty good. And some indie book I want to throw out here as well. Just going down my list. What am I missing?
Monsters, maybe?
You know what? I'm liking Time Before Time, actually. I know that's one nobody ever talks about, but that's been a pretty fun book.
I fell off after about 5 issues.
It was a struggle. I've really enjoyed the last couple, about the last 5 or 6 issues. I think it's gotten some strength back. So good stuff.
Definitely had some, was it the Ryan Johnson vibes from what that movie make with Bruce Willis?
Yeah, it's
Looper.
It's not bad.
Looper.
Vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right, well, thanks for joining us, Perch. Hopefully we can talk about comic books again.
I would like that very much. You guys have a great weekend.
Oh, there it is.
Later, Perch.
Bye, Perch.
Calvin says, Gabe, when you mentioned character ties with the Batman anthology, you saw Kid Eternity and Batman Urban Legends. You think we can have his own series?
Kid Eternity is, I think that would be a tough sell. I mean, you got to do more work on that character. I can't see him picking up his own series. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but more work.
You got to build the character out and make him.
You got to flesh it out more than right. You got to flesh it out a lot more than what he's got.
Very nice, Federico De La Casa. These so-called writers confuse superheroes for real life while they have to treat as an archetype. But for that, there should be an editor to tell them no. Yes.
Ha! Modern editors telling anyone no.
Well, I think these are their stories too. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to tell.
Everybody's looking for the next Watchmen anyway, or whatever you want to call it. Tom King and on and on and on. And I got to put my stamp on this. And you haven't worked in the industry for but a couple of years. I got to put my stamp on it. That's what they expect of me.
To use a baseball metaphor, it's a bunch of 200 hitters trying to be Babe Ruth.
There you go.
Yeah. Calvin says, I said earlier about Image and Indies that they do other genres than just superheroes. DC can make a different line, do other genres as their horror line. They have a different line. It was the guy, the Stephen King's son.
Oh, Joe Hill, the
Joe Hill. They had the Joe Hill line. Obviously, they had Vertigo. I think they just have a DC horror line now.
They call that one, yeah. They'll say DC horror, DC romance for that Harley Quinn one. I think is what it was under.
Yeah. So they're trying to do that, and I don't mind them trying to branch out. I think DC's done some cool stuff, especially in fantasy and in horror and stuff. But they should probably get their superheroes in order before they try to branch out and start getting other genres correct.
Absolutely.
Definitely got a lot of work to do there. So let's wrap this bad boy up. We lost Purge, obviously. Let's do some comic book recommendations. We didn't get through everything, but I knew the What's Wrong with Marvel stuff was going to take a while. Yule Carter, you own a comic book shop.
Yeah,
You're trying to sell this swill to people every single week. Were there any standouts this week?
Yeah, there are. I love Spider-Man. I didn't care about the art that much. And it did feel like a fill-in, except that Joe Kelly was doing a story that references, or it feels like it's like another two-part story he did back when they were doing 3 a month, Amazing Spider-Man 660. You should check that one out too. In the follow-up, they have those really classic J. Scott Campbell covers, Black Cat in them. And anytime Joe Kelly is writing Black Cat, I'm a fan. And then Matt Kent writes and draws Spy Superb.
Mm-hmm.
That's an awesome book. It's a 3-issue, very expensive miniseries, $8 books, but they're fat and they're really well made. And I you gotta like Matt Kent. If you look at it and say I trash art, I can understand, but you're wrong. That's also you got to understand that you're wrong also. And those are my 2 books.
If you like Matt Kent, he came on the channel. I interviewed him about some of my favorite comic books that he wrote. He's definitely one of my favorite writers, and you can't go wrong with Matt Kent. The guy is absolutely a genius. It's probably better for doing his own stuff. He's got his own imprint, I think, at Boom right now.
Yeah, Flux. Or it's Flux at Dark Horse.
The Dark Horse, my bad.
Yeah.
Yes. Gabe, you are a comic book reviewer. I've noticed that you've been more kind with the reviews, although you didn't like Spider-Man like Yule Carter this week at least. What are you recommending this week?
I got a couple options here. So on the Marvel front, I'm going to recommend Joe Fixit #2. It's not the best issue in the world, but it's just fun. I mean, and you could relabel that Smack Talk the issue because it's just Hulk, smack talking Kingpin and smack talking Spider-Man and going the other direction. So it's just kind of like a fun, just a goof around kind of book, but not silly jokey, but just simple and enjoyable. I'm going to give a tentative sort of okay recommendation to Flash 792 because you get a little bit more into what's going on in the 1 minute war, which is starting to come along, get more information about the Fraction, and that's okay. And Batman 132, I think this is a better issue than the previous 2 in Zdarsky's run where he went into this alternate reality. You get a little bit more explanation about what's going on. It clarifies some open questions. It's a bit of a better issue. And on the indie front, I'm really loving Vampirella versus Red Sonja, and this is #4. It's the big crossover multiverse event with the Project, and a lot of this stuff is coming together with demons invading one of the parallel Earths. It feels like a big event book, much better than anything that Marvel or DC has done in the last 6 months at least. It's Dan Abnett on the writing duties, and I really like that book a lot, so I'm going to recommend that one.
Very nice. Josh, I owe you this. I got like a little mini heart right there for you, buddy.
I would
Hopefully
just say,
he's not still harboring ill will towards me.
oh
I think
no,
we're good.
never.
This
I
is
don't.
hard.
I promise I don't. Man, I don't know. Cancel. Don't
one of
cancel.
these.
Wes. Let's not cancel anybody. For me this week, I think it's mostly just Batman Deadly Duo. I agree. The main Batman comic improved a little bit, but I don't know. It feels so been there, done that. I'm not loving it. Other than that, I can't remember if it came out this week or last week. So I'm a little behind in picking up comics, but I love Little Monsters. I think it's a fun little
This
vampire book. Yeah. Good stuff there. So those are my 2.
Yeah, this was actually a pretty decent week for new comic books. I'll give you that little hint when Drew and I talk about our comic book recommendations, obviously later today. Doc, you are the final one. Do you have any new comics or any comics in general you want to recommend?
Well, I definitely do not have new comics. However, I have old comics to recommend.
Ugh.
So I'll start
Look
with
at
one
that.
that is stupid expensive, but you can probably find one. There's a lot of them out on the market. So And since
Hulk 181.
I'm showing some slabs to make you really happy.
That's fine. That's fine. That's a good one to have
You're gonna
slab.
mail them to
Then
him?
this one's not slabbed.
That's great. Don't slab it.
Bloodstone number
Just
1.
charge double.
Yes.
That's what I would do.
Bloodstone number 1. I honestly, I like Dan Abnett as a writer, but I really prefer him paired with Andy Lanning.
Oh man, bring those two. That's what we need to do to save comics.
That as a pairing, as a writing pairing, is so much better than either of them individually. So then,
the best.
Since I think Joe Casey was here earlier, but so Wildcats version 3.0 number 1. Pick up the whole series. It's fucking dope. One of my favorites.
We got Fingers reveal here.
And finally,
BWS.
One of my favorite individual issues of X-Men, Life Death number 1, and mine's signed by Stan.
You just like it because it's extra sized.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. The fact that
story.
Look, it's a great story by Barry Windsor Smith. It's a really, really freaking good story, and
Claremont was hot during that time.
Hell yeah,
he was doing
both Life Death 1 and Life Death 2. Some of my favorite individual issues. Along with that, I loved all of the Barry Windsor Smith individual issues because he always did like one hitters on when he'd do a fill-in issue of X-Men, and it was always a really good, deep, and heartfelt story. So,
yeah, but not a two-hitter quitter.
No. I really wish we would have eventually gotten Life Death 3 that we were supposed to get, but we never did. So there's my recommendations for old comic book recommendations.
Very nice. We had a lot of fun today talking about Marvel and obviously that the issues with DC and Marvel competing with manga. Great having Purge here back. We'll definitely have him back on the channel again, and we'll see you next weekend. Please root for the Chiefs. The Chiefs are going for another Super Bowl. We never win.
Hey, Mato's a hometown boy, man. I'll take it.
See y'all next week.